Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Kissed by Fire, the podcast coming to you down the Antler River, over the shivering sea, and into your listening ears. I'm Stef Lioness.
And I am B-Word. Today's podcast is finally finishing the chapter, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, their Triumphs and Tragedies.
Yeah, it's been a long one. It's actually officially in 4 parts now. This is the 4th and final part of this chapter.
Yes, but this is there's a lot in this chapter. I almost said this is the best part of the chapter, but then I remembered the rest of the chapter. But anyway, it is an exceptional part of the chapter.
Yeah.
Very exciting spot for anyone interested in the lore, magic, prophecy, dragons, and what lies ahead for characters in the main story.
Naturally, obviously, we'll only mention those people in the spoiler section at the end of the episode because we try to be a chronologically spoiler-free podcast. So we will warn you when that bit is about to happen, and you can jump off and go about your day without being spoiled for the main series.
Yes, but we are jumping ahead of ourselves. Before we begin this awesome...
We totally are.
Yeah. Before we begin this awesome episode, we have some housekeeping and an announcement. So let's get the housekeeping out of the way. Get the boring stuff. Not boring stuff, but that stuff done. Mm-hmm. So if you are looking to get in contact with us, you can find us on Twitter on here, but I think we're probably not so much doing Twitter anymore. So we are still there if that's your preferred method for chatting. We are just at Kiss Podcast on Twitter. And we are the same on Blue Sky, Steph?
I believe so. Let me just check our name on Blue Sky. It is kissbyfirepod.bsky.social. Kissbyfirepod.
Perfect.
.bsky.social.
And if you wanted...
And we are now there.
We are now there.
I've been saying it for, I don't know, months. Like, it's been set up.
It's for real this time.
But I've done it this time. It's really there. So find us there on Blue Sky.
Yes. And also you can send us an email at just kissbyfirethepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on our Patreon as well, which is just Kiss by Fire on Patreon.
You can, because if that isn't enough for you, you can find us on Patreon because we are powered by Patreons. And we are completely and utterly grateful for all of their support. And if you want to be part of keeping us going, we have a number of tiers. So you can actually join us for as little as $5 American.
You can.
Which is like £4. I don't know what it is now. As you're listening, Google it. But it's, $5 American.
It's like $7.50 Canadian, something like that. $6.25 probably. Anyway, Patreons get perks and extras like swag, shoutouts, extra content, and now live from your internet. We also have a Patreon-only Discord where we chat and just do drop-ins. We put more content there. Had a nice little chat with 2 of our Patreons just randomly yesterday. Just hopped into the live chat and just chatted our woes away as much as you can do right now. If you're looking for more, you just want to get in and chat with us and have access to all that, join the Patreon.
We want to keep creating content for you. But speaking of Patreon, we should thank our Queen's Guard Patreon, Crispy the Song of Ice. Your support means everything to us. And we thank you from the very bottom of our hearts. Chris got an extra perk this week because of his patronage of us, or patronage. He knew in advance about the announcement that we were having a guest.
We are.
And he knows he knows exactly who they are.
He does. Secrets. Yeah. Before we jump into that, though, one of the Patreon perks that Chris also has is to have his direwolf shouted out. And so we were going to shout out his lovely direwolf, which is named after one of his beautiful direwolves in real life. I hope I'm getting this right. It is named after a Canadian town. Mégantic, I think is right. But Chris can let me know if I failed that utterly. French is not my main language or anywhere near that. Anyway, I'm rambling. Go ahead, Steph.
No, it's fine. No, it's good. So we can shout out to his direwolf as well. So I'm really pleased that we can do that for you as well, Chris. But he knew very well in advance. We gave him a sneaky little preview about who our guest is. We've had lots of guesses on our guests. That's quite hard to say. We've had a few people wonder if it was Renly. We're having Renly Baratheon on our
can't picture that.
Maybe with his
maybe
speech.
Just wouldn't fit in so well here.
Maybe, or was it Mushroom? We've had a few guesses, but Chris knew exactly who it was and who it is, who will be joining us and talking in just a moment. Beth, would you like to introduce?
Yes, I would love to. We have like a fandom legend right here, so I think both of us are like fangirling out a bit. Another person who is kissed by fire. Please welcome, and we're so happy to have you, Lady Gwyn.
Lady Gwyn. From Radio Westeros, Misa to us all, an OG content creator.
Hi.
There might be 3 people who in the world who've never heard of you. So you can tell them about yourself. And
I'm Lady Gwyn from Radio Westeros, and we podcast over at Radio Westeros all about Song of Ice and Fire. We've been doing it for 10 years, and we love doing it.
Yep.
Just keep on trucking. We were talking before we.
You guys are like the pioneers.
We're like those
you are.
Oregon Trail people. I've been snake bit. I've been brought back to life from.
I feel like I kind of came of a Song of Ice and Fire age with Radio Westeros. I feel like it's been with me for so many years now.
Me too.
That I'm just it's like a family friend. It's just always there, and every single time I get a little notification that there's a new episode, I'm literally because it's just the best. If anyone, I said it before when we were just chatting before we started recording, but if you want the actual best, like, summaries of characters, of storylines, of geography, of history, of lore, but also just the best analysis, like taking you through with little droplets of tinfoilery and looking ahead, and and humor, and if you want that, then Radio Westeros is the thing you need. If you somehow have been in the fandom, you've not heard of Radio Westeros, then I
don't think there's any way you're listening to us and you haven't heard of Radio Westeros.
I don't think you've ever listened to us and have not heard of Radio Westeros. You will have done. But just in case there's like the one person who's like, oh, I've never heard of them before, then that's what you want. But honestly, it's like I've been listening to Radio Westeros for so many years, and
I know I'm like Radio Westeros hipster. I'm like, do you know that I was like probably one of their first followers?
You were. You were. I remember. I remember you buying T-shirts.
I bought a T-shirt.
I think that was
very early on.
Yeah. Very early.
Yeah. I think I saw Aziz wearing one, and I was like, excuse me, I need one of those.
Yeah. I think that was like in the first year before we had a Patreon or anything. We were But so thank you, because obviously if people.
That's all right. You guys got me through lockdown as well. Like in lockdown, there's a whole back catalogue. Just listening to all of the shows whilst also trying to think of things to do. That's when to survive. In my house.
We started our streams of winter during lockdown. That was hopefully that was when we had never previously live streamed other than doing show coverage on History of Westeros. And we just wanted to give ourselves and everybody else something to do. So that was.
Loved it. I loved it.
I need to get a shout out to one of my favourite episodes, which was when you were drinking loads of alcohol.
Oh!
I think it's just like called Radio
Was it the
Westeros
quiz? I did it the quiz.
And I think you were just talking about
it was
food.
It was a quiz, and it was with Chloe and
yes, it was with
Chloe and from Girls Gone Canon. Radio Westeros quiz is drunk. So it was so modeled on drunk history.
I laughed out loud I think I was on a bus somewhere, and I literally laughed out loud in front of strangers on a bus.
Oh, well, it was a lot of fun. It was also it was Haley. Yeah, they Chloe and Haley used to have a Song of Ice and Fire history. So that was what inspired the drunk quiz, but. Anyways,
so
you were. That's wasn't what I expected when you said that your favorite episode, but that's. Thank you.
The quizzes were so fun in general; like they were great. I forgot about those. They were great.
The quizzes were good. The quizzes, I've done so many, and I'd be like, oh shit, I know this one, but I can't think of the bloody answer. And you're like, you kick yourself, and you get to it, and you're like, I knew that one, I knew it, but I couldn't.
That food quiz is the only one I got a perfect score on.
Woo!
I remember that. Yeah. I did.
Gold star.
That
Yeah.
was cool. Well, will people get a perfect score if we quizzed them about what happened in this chapter that we've been breaking down for
like a
months
year
now, because it is a long it's been a long chapter. It is a really massive chapter, and we are going to be talking about some seriously awesome things. We left the last chapter with Alysanne had just gone north without Jaehaerys. We talked for a long time about Jaehaerys having, for some reason, and we wondered what the literary purpose of that was, being made to stay in King's Landing to sort out a problem with what was going on in the Free Cities, and he had to sort that out. It was a much lighter episode last time, and there was we had bits about Rhaena, about her life and her death, which sort of
depressing and sad and horrible, and I love her, and that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, it was a jump. It was like, we're in 57 AC, but they jumped to 73 AC for that. And so there was some chat about that and the start of the journey north for Alysanne Targaryen. Then we also talked a lot about the Faceless Men.
We did.
Because there was a visit from Bath. Septon Bath went to Braavos to talk with Sea Lord of Braavos about the debts that the Crown owed to the Iron Bank. And there was interesting chat about whether there are Faceless Men in King's Landing right now. And I still think about some of the things. I won't talk about it because they were more in the spoiler section. Some of the things that Beth said that made me go, oh my god. So yeah, but that's where we left it last time. And this time, get yourselves ready, because this is the section of the chapter that is full of magic. It's full of prophecy. Alysanne goes further north. She goes to Winterfell. She goes to the Wall. There are some very odd, very dark goings on. Jaehaerys eventually joins her. There's some interesting details about that. And the final thing is Alysanne changes some of the laws of Westeros for forever. It has a lasting effect. One of the things that happens while she's in the north changes everything, changes the face, changes the culture of Westeros forever at that point. And that is what we are going to discuss. So it's a pretty cool... I like reading through this as I don't know, you guys preparing... There's very little, like, parts of Fire and Blood
fluffy.
are fluffy and information and just blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I don't really care about that. And I do think some of the Jaehaerys stuff is a bit...
Oh, yeah, that's the fluff. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But... And I would like to discuss, as we get into it, why George has added those things in, do you think? But we'll get to that. But this is a very exciting section of text, which I think has humongous...
implications for the future.
Implications for the future, implications for the general lore of Westeros and what we think the whole thing is about. Basically, like, if you're going to listen to one episode, listen to this one today. And that's, again, why I'm so excited that Lady Gwyn is here, because she will have the most amazing insights, I think, into all of this.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So what happens?
So I will... Shall I do the Maesterly voice?
Do your Maesterly voice.
Yeah, I was going to say. Do the Maesterly voice.
Put your Maester voice on.
This section. Okay. Okay. I've got to pretend I'm an old white man. And... I'm some of those things. So, after taking leave of White Harbour, the Queen's retinue sailed up the White Knife to its rapids, then proceeded overland to Winterfell, whilst Alysanne herself flew ahead on Silverwing. The warmth of her reception at White Harbour was not to be duplicated at the ancient seat of kings in the north, where Alaric Stark and his sons alone emerged to greet her, when her dragon landed before his castle gates. And that's how the section begins. If you remember White Harbour, she had a lovely time. There'd been a tourney and a melee with a wildling girl, and she made Jonquil Dark have a little to-do with her. And
it was great.
Lots of merriment. And that was not what happened really when they got to Winterfell.
No, it was a bit chillier there.
I was wondering, chillier. Is this the first time though? I'm not sure, but is this the first time we've actually seen Winterfell in Fire and
Yeah.
Blood?
Yeah.
Is this it?
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen it before.
It's off page, Aegon the First visits, but it's just a hand wave. This is the first.
Yeah.
Which is
yeah.
interesting because I am currently writing the first part of our Bran coverage, which is a 3-part series coming. And, obviously Bran is your first in the main series. And I don't think that's spoilery. I hope it's not. But he is your first real vision into Winterfell, and get loads of good descriptions. So I'm feeling very immersed this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you? Well, as I was saying just before we chatted, I'm hopefully going to visit the castle that they filmed some of the Winterfell scenes in.
That's exciting.
So cool. So
Just
cool.
about an hour
Yeah.
from my house.
So cool. Yeah.
So I'm excited.
I love Alaric Stark. I know a lot of people don't. Do you know why I love him? He's oh, it's a spoiler. I was like, he's like somebody who I really like, who's a derisive character.
Okay. Well, you wait.
I will wait on that.
You hang on to that. You wait till the end.
File
Lord
it away.
Alec, so it's a very icy
It
reception.
is.
Obviously, normally you're like they're welcoming their queen, and they don't have a very big welcoming party. It is just a few people outside of Winterfell, and I feel like is that a risky thing to do, to not really welcome the queen with a bit more of a...
I think it's just showing such a
welcome
stark cultural difference from what she's used to in the South. And the Manderleys still represent the South. They're like the South and the North in their own way. So they're, for the first time, we're really getting immersed into Northern culture. And so we're starting off with such a drastic, this is not how it's done here. There's no fanfare here. We can't afford that shit. Winter is coming.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree. I think Northern hospitality is such that would be warm and welcoming, and I feel like it's they've gone for this. I don't know why, but they've gone for this for a particular reason.
In the main series, I guess we could talk about this later, there's a strong contrast to this.
I'm going to bring that up in the spoiler section.
A very large contrast, but also the other part of that, like in addition to the reception, is the arrival, because she's just herself. She's just all by herself here.
Yeah.
So maybe, a woman rolls up on a dragon and it's like, okay, we'll just go out and say, hey,
I'm not going to bring out my whole household for you to burn if you're in a bad mood.
150 people just to say hi to this one little, she's very young too. This little slip of a girl shows up at your gate on a dragon. So
yeah. I don't know if someone turned up at my house with the dragon, I'd be like, right, what else do you want? I'll show you everything. I'll get all my furniture outside for you if you want. You've got a dragon, whatever you need.
I just think it was intentional that he was like, I'm not kissing your butt. You're the first Targaryen that's even bothered to come up here. I'm going to show you the true North, strong and free.
Yeah. But do we think it's rude? Is he rude to not have more people?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just the way they are.
I think, did you remember, they say very quickly that he doesn't have a wife. I think he's just making the point that it's maybe not just even about the people or the queen or this and that. I think it's just about we're dudes and we don't do ceremony. That's kind of how I took it. He's just refusing to.
Interesting.
And also, I think that he is pissed off that it's not Jaehaerys.
Well, there's that too.
I think he is put out. Like, there's this misogyny runs deep in Westeros. So he's like, how much am I really going to do for a little queen? He gets rude when he's like, I hope you're dressed warmer than that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to survive up here. Like, that's rude. But I think just him just being him and his sons greeting her, I don't think that that's rude. I just think that's him.
Yeah.
If we get to the description of him, though, it's quite interesting. I found the words used by George very interesting. He calls him flinty. Look out for that word a lot, because I kept thinking, why are you saying flinty? Like, especially as you've got House Flint in the north. And when I was starting to do some research, you know how I love minor houses.
You do.
And looking at House Flint, and it is such a complicated house.
It is.
There are sort of like 4 sections and 4 places they could be, and they have very just different, like they're almost wildling in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, the wildlings call people and they call people the wool, the flint, not lord. It's not, that's almost southern, which is interesting. But I wondered why, if there was a reference to House Flint in why George uses the word flinty. It's at least 3 times he calls Lord Alaric Stark flinty. He also says that he was a hard man, stern and unforgiving, tight-fisted, almost to the point of being niggardly, humourless, joyless, cold. It was said that he was well respected in the North, but not loved. And apparently Lord Manderley, who we've met before, says, "Methinks Lord Alaric has not moved his bowels since he was 12."
But you know how we get like maesterly wiffle waffle over people who are different than they are?
Yes.
I kind of think that, I mean, like, I get that Alaric is stern, and it's, I mean, like, you know, you're a writer. Obviously, this is meant for us to come in and for most people, maybe not me, love Alysanne walking into this chapter, and they're like, oh, how dare he treat her like that? And so you're meant to be put off by him for a reason, for the payoff of him warming up to her. Right?
And and I will have things to say about this in the spoiler section again, just because there is a direct contrast with a later character. The reception that Queen Alysanne has, like you mentioned before, he's like, I hope you're wearing something warmer than that, wolf. You know, that's not the first thing I would say to the Queen. And also he's like, I'm not having the dragon inside my walls. Get your dragon out.
I don't blame him. I don't think I would want
But isn't
I haven't seen Harrenhal, but I've heard about it, and that's
isn't
not
it just
happening
like
here.
a little gauche to be like, yeah, I know what Harrenhal, I know how your ancestor, your great grandfather burned this castle. I mean, maybe you shouldn't mention that. Maybe people in other parts of Westeros wouldn't quite
He's a little curt.
mention that to the Queen while she's on her dragon. Don't know.
But it's like every sentence he says something with a sting. So he's like, you need to be warmer. Your dragon's not staying here. I'll have your knights and retainers, and I'll have your husband when he gets here.
Yeah, he's condescending as fuck.
Yeah,
Like,
if he bothers to come. If he can find the way.
He does offer a minor bit of explanation. He says, this is the North and winter is coming. We cannot feed 1,000 men for long. And that's a very good point. Winter is coming. That is the Stark words. If you didn't know that, those are the words of House Stark. And it's true. If you've got winter coming, you can't have 1,000 people in your house. Because you will lose food and people will literally die because of that, and that's something that northern houses have to think about.
Yeah, he's pragmatic.
Every mouth matters.
And it's, I don't know, because so in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the States or Canada, but in the UK we do actually talk about northern hospitality, and the further north you go, we talk about kind of the more welcoming people are and how much extra food you'll get and drink. I'm in Scotland, so you get a lot of food and a shit ton of drink. And it's like, come into my house, be my friend, drink what you like, stay as long as you need. And that is something we talk about, northern hospitality. So it's interesting to me that his is quite so curt, because you have that balance of northern hospitality, but also you have to be, when you have winters that you have no idea how long these are going to last for. And they're not just, like, winter is tough anyway, because up here where it snows and it's cold and crops can fail, and it can make, especially as we now have like climate emergency shit going on, people are all like upset that shelves are empty. But imagine being in Westeros where there's just no food because the harvest didn't come in quite as well, and the Queen and 1,000 knights and servants came to visit and ate all the food. And obviously she assures them very quickly, no, it's like not even 100 people, so that's fine. But even then, like, that's 100 extra mouths to feed that he would be thinking, like, I need to keep my people alive, so can you really blame him for worrying
not
about
at all.
that kind of
And
thing?
like I said, like, I think that we're meant to see a contrast between the Andals and the First Men. Like, this is a big introduction of a house like we have not seen before, and so it needs to be a stark
Yeah.
difference.
I love it. And of course, even then, when she's like, oh no, it's like less than 100, even then he can't help but put in a barb. I quite like him. Like, he's like, that's great. But even fewer than that would be better.
He'd clearly get along well with a favorite Baratheon. Fewer would be better, not less.
Yes, I know. Even the fewer in this, I was like,
fewer.
That's we'll come to that later, but that's where
George.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
I liked that, though.
I did too.
I liked the good use of fewer as a person who enjoys excellent
Absolutely.
grammar. I was like, oh my God.
Absolutely.
This is amazing. Fewer is beautiful. But he was annoyed because Jaehaerys wasn't there. Do we remember what? I talked briefly about it, but what was Jaehaerys?
I don't really care. Who cares what he was doing?
He's trying to negotiate a peace between the Pentashi and the Tyrashi.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Lady Gwyn.
I am so serious now.
Yeah, you are nothing if not professional.
I am the opposite of that.
Yeah, he was back in King's Landing. It's very interesting. We talked last time quite a lot about what the literary purpose of him being there, and as we go through the chapter, we can maybe discuss it more. But as I was rereading it, I was genuinely like, why is this happening? And I do have an idea as to why George decided that Jaehaerys needed to stay behind and Alysanne needed to go. And part of that is because I think, very, very briefly, I think he wanted to display the talents of Alysanne at winning people over.
Yeah.
And another thing is he wanted to have Alysanne have more knowledge of the North and the troubles that the North face for not just the laws, but also potentially to do with the prophecy of Aegon.
Interesting.
Is my feelings.
Interesting.
But I'll get onto that as I get on there. He does mention that it mentions that Alaric had lost his wife 3 years
I have a big
ago.
moment here. This is a big moment. I'm going to concede
I'm so excited.
that. So this
Okay.
is big, Lady Gwyn, because you probably don't know this, but for a very long time, because of the early chapters of A Game of Thrones, I have believed that the Mormonts were first men. Were not first men, because of the way Jorah speaks to Jon. And not Jorah, Jeor speaks to Jon, and Jorah the Andal and all that. So I actually still believe that initially George didn't plan for them to be first men. However, reading this, I concede that the Mormonts are a first men house.
The reason why Beth is talking about the Mormonts is because Alaric Stark's wife was a Mormont of Bear Isle. And it says, "And no lady by your lights, but she took an axe to a pack of wolves when she was 12, killed 2 of them and sewed a cloak from their skins. She gave me 2 strong sons as well, and a daughter as sweet to look upon as any of your southern ladies."
That's not why I think they're first men, but it's
Just badass.
Later,
But
he's-
it's absolute badass.
she is.
Yeah.
I love her.
So
Boss.
Beth, we have talked in the past about you believe. Do you want to explain to Lady Gwyn what the language is? What is your argument for why the Mormonts might have been
Jeor says to
followers of the Seven?
Jeor says to Jon, I assume you want to swear your vows before a heart tree as your uncle did before you. He doesn't say like we do in the North. He excludes himself from that tradition, when I feel like it would have been just as easy to just say like we do that. So he singles out Jon as wanting to be like his uncle and not like a Northerner. Like they all do. So that's the big part of it. But just in general, and again, there's the, Jorah the Andal language that's used throughout the books, and this is all spoilery, and I'm terrible. We're off the kilter with spoilers this week, guys. Sorry. Usually we don't talk about any of this during the episode, but anyway, that's okay.
I think it's okay.
It's fine. It's okay. This is a one-off. We'll be bad this week.
It'll just make people want to read.
I mean, I'm
the
sure
main
they all
series
have.
again
If you're
already.
reading Fire and Blood, you've probably already read the main series. But anyway, we've had a system.
Exactly.
We usually stick to it, but I'm terrible this week. Anyway.
All of our brains have stopped
They
working this
have,
week.
in
so-
general, yes. Anyway, so that's mostly just I feel like through A Game of Thrones, you don't really get the clear words from Jeor that he believes in the old gods. So that's why. But then when he says, when Alysanne in this chapter offers to make marriage pacts between his kids and Southerners, he's like, He's like, we keep to the old gods here, which tells me that his wife must have as well. He wouldn't have married her if she didn't. So it's pretty clear in this chapter that the Mormonts...
Other characters in the North have married people from the Faith of the Seven.
They have, but...
Later in. I won't start talking about that because it's super spoilery, but it is not unheard of.
No, but in this particular moment in time, Alarak is not marrying his kids to anyone who doesn't keep to the old gods, which obviously says that the Mormonts did. So that's that. Done and dusted.
I really want to hear... I would like to hear, though, because I nearly was like, okay, I'll consider it. Because I've definitely believed that the Mormonts are followers of the old gods, that they're first men. But you nearly had me last time, so I really want to hear Lady Gwyn's opinions and what you believe about the Mormonts. Your thoughts on the Mormonts?
My thoughts on the Mormonts, I think they're first men. I think they're old gods. I think the ones in the series that we meet, barring Jorah, who's a little bit of an outlier because of the word, his nickname. But that's just people who don't know the difference. That's be like, someone say, I'm not sure if you're probably not actually Scottish. I don't think you are, but you live. So, but it'd be like someone calling a Scottish person who prefers to identify as Scottish, British. It's just like kind of, painting with a broad brush. So I think that's where that Andal stuff comes from in that sense. Also, he was knighted for heroism. So that also gives this sort of flavor of... God, I'm sorry, I'm awfully spoilery too. But hey, I'm sorry if you don't know that Jorah is a knight. Yeah,
not giving too much
it's
away,
not a plot point. It's a character.
Tantalizing.
It's a but yeah, I think that lends to that sort of interpretation. But I do think that everything else we learn about Mormonts, whether it's in the World Book or in the main series, certainly leads me to think that they're followers of the old gods. And first men, and have been doing it maybe not quite as long as the Starks in Winterfell, because there was another family house on Bear Isle prior to them.
Yeah. They won it in an arm wrestle?
Well, they got it back in... The wrestling match came from... That was with the Ironborn, I think. There was actually another northern house that lived there at one point. I just read it today, and I can't remember the name of them. So, I'm sorry.
I have to say that the House Mormon are on my list of like maybe top 3 to 5 houses that I would love to spend a weekend with. I just think they'd be so awesome to hang out with.
I like them a lot,
especially all the females.
Yes.
And actually, again, not to be sycophantic or anything, but Radio Westeros did a really interesting episode about House Mormon that I really enjoyed.
It was wonderful. It's one of my favorites. I mean, I have so many favorites.
Really was. Yeah. But as a person who enjoys minor house stuff, and Mormon aren't totally a minor house, but they are minor-ish. I'd say they minor adjacent. They are mentioned in the main series.
Minor adjacent.
But
minor adjacent.
Minor adjacent.
Literally right backed up against POV characters all the way through. We are off the rails with spoilers. Anyway.
I know, but they're not. So I mean, I'm not giving anything away. I'm just saying that they are minor adjacent, and they're never a POV character. They're not one of the big main houses that we have to follow and root for. But the characters are just so interesting, and especially if you want really badass female characters like this one that Alaric mentions, who took an axe to a pack of wolves and killed some and made skins out of them and blah blah blah. They are just, I would just absolutely love to hang out with them for a while.
You wouldn't think that there's symbolism in that. They took an axe to a pack of wolves and she's married to a Stark.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, just in contrast to other things, but that I won't talk about because I will actually keep a lid on the spoilers for a second.
Yeah.
All right.
And you're right, though, when he says, she's like, as we talked about in other episodes, one of the jobs of Alysanne, one of the things that she liked to do was make matches, and she says to Alaric, hey, I'll make some matches for your sons to the daughters of great southern lords. And he's like, no, we keep the old gods up here, so shut your face. So they'll do it, they have to do it in front of a heart tree, not a southern sept. Which is interesting because we literally just talked last week about House Manderley, who are a northern house, but they still keep to the 7, and no one seems to mind that. And in fact, they are so loyal to the Starks, it's unreal. But it's... so what interests me is what Alysanne says back to him, and that's the Lords of the South honoured the old gods as well as the new. And that lots of them have a godswood as well as a sept. And that there were still certain... houses, plural, that had never accepted the 7. And the Blackwoods were among them, but there were probably lots more. And I'm like, are there lots of houses that we don't know?
At this stage, who knows? But House Royce is another that keeps to the old gods. They're one of my favorite houses.
They do, yeah. I love
do you know that it's actually not ever specified that they keep to the old gods? We assume they do.
It's not?
I went looking for it last night, and it's not specified. However,
interesting.
Obviously, they have all these other. They have these elements that they're first men, but so is House Tully are first men.
Yes,
and so that's doesn't necessarily mean anything about their religion, but.
No.
But they definitely seem that they keep to the traditions, and they're close with the Starks, and they've intermarried with the Starks. So I think that they probably are, but it literally doesn't specify anywhere. But then they're all knights too. But then Jorah's a knight, so
that's true.
I mean,
that's true.
I don't know. But I tend to lean to the yes. House Royce is most likely one of those first men houses that has kept the old gods. Alysanne mentions that there are a dozen. She says a dozen in this chapter.
Give me more, Alysanne. Tell me all of them.
I mean, which dozen are we? Yeah, as many as a dozen. Well, which dozen are they? On top of the Blackwoods, of course, that we all...
Or is she just like... I mean, she mentions like a dozen... She mentions that they have godswoods, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they keep actually pray to both.
She says...
Right?
No, she says that every castle still has a godswood, which is true, because most of them have godswoods. Yeah. Some of them even have weirwoods. There's a weirwood at Castle Rock. There's a weirwood at River Run. There was one at Storm's End. In this timeline,
stage in this story,
there is a one at Storm's End.
King's Landing.
I don't know about that. I don't think there was ever one in King's Landing. Well, there's a godswood.
I'm saying that only because of the show.
There's a godswood, but there's not a
the
tree.
Show, but the show does have a weirwood. Or at least
the show does.
House of the Dragon has a weirwood.
But,
yeah.
Okay, so I never think about the show. In terms of this, so
I know. I don't usually think of it as canon. Like I go back and forth with like show canon, us canon stuff, but in this case, like, and Stef and I argue that often. But in this case, I'm like maybe there was at one point a weirwood in that godswood, and that's why they've included it in the show.
Yeah, there's a giant one at Harrenhal.
Yeah.
So she mentions that anyway, all the god, and that's interesting because Harrenhal was only just built at the time of the conquest. So, the first house to take Harrenhal, to do a little lore, is a Valyrian house after the conquest, and then it goes into probably what are a bunch of first men houses. So, I have to think that weirwood tree is so huge that the castle was built around it.
Yeah.
Because it couldn't have gotten that big in 300 years. It's much bigger than the one at Winterfell.
It's massive, yes.
It
makes sense, too, that there would be one at Harrenhal, when you, like with the Isle of Faces being so close.
I mean, they're all over they were all over the Riverlands at some point. So, but she says that the castles have... every castle has a godswood as well as a sept, but then she also says there are still certain houses that have never accepted the 7, no more than the Northmen had, the Blackwoods chief amongst them, and mayhaps as many as a dozen more. So she specifically says there are maybe a dozen that are still worshipping the old gods in the south. She doesn't say where they are. I mean, I tend to think Riverlands.
I would like a list, Alysanne. Tell me them all.
They could be in the Stormlands. They could be in Dorne. I tend to think in the sort of mountainous, remote areas, maybe, I mean, think about the clans in the Mountains of the Moon and the Vale. They're basically wildlings. They're basically like a stranded sect of wildlings.
But they're not houses. They're not like...
No, she wouldn't be talking about them, but they would... I mean, we're not about to, suggest that Lord Alaric marry his daughter into one of the burned men. Oh, boy. Yeah. So...
Oh, man. I would like more information
we definitely
on that, but that was a
need that list of...
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, so then she moves. She does spend some time in Winterfell, but she gets a little bored there. Not bored, but wants to continue to explore the north.
We can talk about her winning over Lord Alaric, because it says the longer the queen stayed, the more Lord Alaric warmed to her. Alysanne, charming and just adorable.
She charmed him. It's so funny. So Steph talked about maybe why thematically George maybe let this just be Alysanne and didn't send Jaehaerys up with her. And my reasoning, I think, for that, I think it was just to let her shine here. Just to actually give Alysanne her moment to really... So I don't love Alysanne. I think she can be really problematic, and but in these moments, it's I love how she does this and just how well she uses her, her manners and her womanly wit, as they say, and that's usually something that I say I don't like, but I think she does it really well with Alaric. She ends up really playing him like a fiddle, and he doesn't see it coming at all, and she does a good job.
Yeah. I will tell you because. Steph wanted to know my opinion about Alysanne. I think she's my favorite Targaryen, and planning to do an episode on her one day. Hopefully, maybe in the next year, but I'm not sure if it will fit in this year. However, I think she's the most interesting Targaryen because she's fully fleshed out. Much.
She's certainly someone we actually get a real feel for, which you don't have all the way through. Yeah.
So, and I think she was really the OG feminist of the land. I mean,
I think, so Marcus and I had Marcus is one of our Patreons, and I think one of yours too. We had a big debate recently in our Discord, because Alysanne, for me, she's in this chapter especially, she really does make moves. But Alysanne is she's the woman who walks her role in a patriarchal world and never really pushes it too far. She plays her part. She concedes that she has a womanly part to play, and she plays it, and then she uses that influence while she's in there to make her moves. And it reminds me a lot of historical, when you see the rise of the church and women marrying men and bringing them into Catholicism, and then they have sort of sway with their lord husbands in that way, but they never really have any power within their religion, only through how they use the men. And then she's contrasted often to her sister, Rhaena, who is a queer character, a very strong woman who has been through so much and is certainly less warm than Alysanne at this, especially by the end of her life. Everyone's oh, she's so mean. She does these terrible things. She doesn't treat people well. And I think that there's just so much more to her story than that. But the Rhaenas or there's modern characters I would also use as contrasts that we can talk about more in the later section. But in this book, when you have someone fierce like Rhaena or Alice Westhill, who try to, Rhaena especially, she should have been the queen and she just rubbed people the wrong way. She was an independent woman who through this book was vilified because she didn't conform to what a woman was supposed to behave like. And so I'm not saying that I don't like Alysanne. A lot of the time, I don't love that. But I really don't like that she's often compared to Rhaena. And it's like, well, she's so great because Rhaena's so bad. But
this is very interesting to me because this is not how I see either one of those characters. So it's interesting how, to me, that, you know, people have very different experiences of these. They're characters. After all, they're not actually real people, and we tend to view them through the eyes of our own, you know, our own lives, our own experiences. To me, Alysanne is someone she's strong and confident. She's using her position to make other women's lives better, which we see in this chapter. You saw it already.
In this chapter, we do.
You saw it previously. I imagine you talked about it in another episode with the Widow's Law.
Yeah, the Widow's Law was a good one. There's also so just in contrast to that though, one of the things that I was just like, come on, was when they went to Old Town and she went in and she sat in with all the maesters and she had conversations with them and she's like, let women in here. Let us do this. Like, women can do this. And they said no. And she was just like, okay. And I was like, well, you have the power to just build this yourself. Just make your own. You know, it's like she finds places where she can give women breaks, but she never really takes that branch and says, this is what I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to create this whole new thing for women. She says, like, I'll make this better and I can adjust this here. But it's never like, I'm going to tackle this branch and create something just for us.
I think realistically, that wasn't on the table, if you think about it as a product of the time. But
I don't know. I think she could have done it. I do, because they were already the Silent Sisters. Like, there was a precedence for women having knowledge in a certain scope, a certain lens. And even if she had just worked starting off with her own household and the women that were in her retinue, I think she had a shot. I don't know. I compare it mentally, and of course it's not real world at all. But like mentally, I compare it to people like Margaret Beaufort who did make houses for, like, religious houses for women of her time where they could be educated and stuff. And I think, like, we don't see that at all in these books, this opportunity for a woman to be educated. We don't see it, at least in part one, maybe in Blood and Fire down the line, we'll get an example of it. But this is a great chapter, though. Like, what she does in this chapter is very big and it's very important. And we'll talk about it more once
the historical analog. The historical analog is Queen Philippa, the wife of King Edward III, one of the Plantagenet kings from the 14th century. And his wife, Philippa, has a lot in common with Alysanne. And that predates the person that you mentioned, Margaret Beaufort, by about 200 years. So, so there's a lot, you know, in terms of their marriage and the power that she wielded through the king to kind of make incremental changes. You know, it also kind of puts me in mind of someone like Abigail Adams, entreating her husband, future president of the newly formed U.S., to remember the ladies. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, what did I say to Marcus was Alysanne she just stayed in that lane. And I just wish that she had just, like, put a toe out of line. And she definitely does, like, use her place to push back later. And of course we'll talk about that when we get there. But
in this very chapter.
In this chapter she does, and I'll talk about it more when we get there, but it's her idea, it's her fighting for it. But it still takes more influence than just her being able to say this is going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, she definitely lights the fire, but it definitely takes more for that to get rolling. And it's just like, I'm like, I appreciate what she does in this chapter. This is definitely, like, for me, this is her best feminism moment. And there's more than one way to be a feminist, for sure.
But she's also, she's restricted by the world she lives in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I just, like, in the last chapter, we talked about how Alysanne was surprised that her daughter Daenerys wasn't going to be the heir And I was like, how can you be surprised at that? You supplanted Rhaena. Like, you let your husband supplant your older sister. She should be the queen. If that was the precedence, she would be the queen, not you guys. You wouldn't be ruling. So I think that I was just kind of like, oh, Alysanne.
Kinda, but also that's such a weird situation too. But we're not here to talk about Rhaena and
We're not.
Yeah. So
just have to bring like everybody into our little like common debates that we have in this in this story.
Speaking up in that way and obviously challenging the patriarchy the way that she does, and as we'll talk about later in this chapter, the fact that she wins a lot of her points and still has the maesters like fawn over her. Like, a lot of this chapter is like, Alysanne was loved by everybody and everybody loves her so much, and the maesters don't really like women and they don't really like female Targaryens a lot. So for the very fact that they're writing this book and they still really like Alysanne, despite the fact that she, as we saw in the last section of this chapter, she made Jaehaerys like change the water, like, you need to dig wells, we need to have better water for the people. She challenged him, and they could have written her off, as they do with a lot of really strong women. They tend to just write them off as like either witches or harlots, you know.
Right.
Obviously she practiced sorcery, you know, and I don't know why with Alysanne, and because they love her so much, I'm a bit like, why? You know, why do you love her so much? But they do. They really do. I don't trust the maesters very much, but they do like her.
my take is that she was, she's one of those people who's very adept at walking lines and borders and, you know, getting right up to the edge but still staying within. I think she is someone who would recognize, especially if you take the example of her sister, Rhaena, that to be too different or too strong or too demanding or disruptive is not going to be the trick here. No, because then you're just going to get written off and sent to live in a ruinous castle by yourself somewhere. So she works within the, within the boundaries of the world she lives in to make incremental change. And I happen to know, I know we weren't going to talk about real world politics, but I'm going to say one thing, and I'm going to say I happen to know a real world politician who has expressed that opinion very recently. Change is incremental. It doesn't just happen all at once. It takes a lot of people doing a lot of, small little things and making little improvements and tweaks here and there. And I think that's how I read Alysanne for the most part.
I read her, I would agree. I totally agree. And I think that there is always, we have to always remember about Fire and Blood is that this is a work of propaganda.
Yeah, true.
So always have that in your mind, like that this is, there's going to be a particular take on a character. And although it might be upsetting that they choose to portray other strong female characters negatively, and why must Alysanne, just because she maybe is more feminine, maybe is more gentle, I don't know. But that's the way they've chosen to portray her, but that's not her fault. Like, she has had some really positive changes.
But I think, like, on that, it's a work of propaganda, and they're hoisting her up so high because she's a woman. They're saying that
she is. They want you to think that because this was written by a male maester.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
We don't really know because it's not a point of view structure. We don't really know what she thought about anything or what her motivations were, or what she said to Jaehaerys behind the scenes.
No.
Other than in those, the council, we get council meetings and we get, things that maesters witnessed and report to us.
I was thinking a lot about that with even the introduction of Alaric Stark and just how, like, they're different than everybody else. And so it's like, was it this cold and contrasting to everything else, or is this just the maester's way of...
The fun challenge of Fire and Blood that we have found is that you just don't know, and neither actually does George. George doesn't know. He's like, I don't know, all of it could be true, none of it could be true, and that's the fun of it.
Yes. It's
absolutely.
basically Schrodinger's Targaryens.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Have it your way.
Yes.
Have we mentioned that Alaric Stark did actually eventually approach Silverwing? Have you talked about that? Yeah. So he does eventually go to approach Silverwing, Alaric Stark.
Mm-hmm.
And he does like her. Shows her some bones of a giant.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
No,
The bones of a giant.
I would be like, oh my god, that's so cool.
For serious, right? I know. I read that. I was like, wait.
It's like, that's so cool. Yeah, exactly. Like just a giant. If people don't know from the main series, there were giants in Westeros at one point. Perhaps there are still some at some parts of the world. We just don't know at this point. But giants once roamed Westeros, and to see the bones of a giant would be absolutely awesome. I love that thing. His daughter Alara, I like that. My name's Alaric. I've got a daughter. What should I call her? Alara.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I don't know if they mention what his sons' names are, but it is funny that she's named, and I don't think they are.
I did look up his family tree, and I can't remember what his sons are called. I think they do have names, but not here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But she particularly Alara likes Alysanne very much, and they got on very well.
I'm sure Alara is like, please take me with you. Get me out of here. It's boring.
Oh, I don't
It'd be
know.
warmer down there.
Maybe.
You know? It's like any girl in a small town. It's like, get me out of this place.
But the rest of the party did eventually turn up, even though it was a really difficult journey for them through summer snows. It snows in summer, everybody in the north. Summer snows.
It does.
We have a little jump to King's Landing for a moment at that point.
Yawn.
Yeah, I know. I was a bit like, oh, I don't care about this. Peace talks. I just feel like this was a literary device done by George to keep Alysanne and Jaehaerys apart for a hot moment. And to keep us in our heads that Essos is also a place in Planetos. So stuff that happens in Essos affects things that happen in Westeros. So it's just a little thing there that you need to keep, don't just think about what happens in Westeros. Think about what happens in Essos too.
And vice versa.
And vice versa.
As we will see.
I do feel like it's a particularly weak part of the story, right? It's just...
Yeah.
You've got all this really interesting stuff going on with Alysanne, and then...
I don't know. The prince and the Archon are dickering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we just that sentence, I don't know. The paragraph is worth it for that. But,
yeah. It's dickered. What is dickering? Have I dickered? It literally says they dickered.
Dickered. They argued.
Is that fighting with
It
their
means, yes.
private parts?
I would imagine
They're sword fighting.
it's actually a metaphor for sword fighting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Yes. Well, it wasn't just fights between them, but it was fights across the city and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, God, yes. Guys just killing each other because what? I don't even know.
But the point that George is trying to make is that, essentially, like, Jaehaerys is delayed. Again, he's delayed more than he thought he was going to be.
Delayed
so he's
and
still
delayed.
not at Winterfell.
Yeah.
Delayed and delayed and delayed. And then we jump back to the north. That Queen Alysanne is a bit like, I'm restless. I want to go and do stuff. So she leaves Winterfell for a little bit of time and goes to Castle Black, to the Wall. So we've heard about the Wall and the Night's Watch, but we've never been there before either. Which is very exciting. Castle Black is the main castle at the Wall, where the Lord Commander works from. And it's a very interesting castle. It has no defences on its southern side because it's not meant to have them, because of something to do with another castle later on that we'll find out this chapter. It was even in the north, like you understand. I feel like this chapter George talks a lot about the difficulty of journeys. So he talks like the Queen's party finally turned up at Winterfell's castle's gates after struggling through trackless bogs and summer snows. And now when the Queen has left Winterfell, the journey is still long and hard from Winterfell to the Wall. Even though you're like, oh, it's like not that far, but it's far. I think I feel like George is giving us this idea that the North in particular is this vast place that even if you have a dragon, you might look at the map of Westeros, but it doesn't really give you an understanding of just what a journey takes to get around Westeros.
I think it's also like to contrast to how populous the South is.
Yeah.
This is not only is it large, but it's also like it's not super populated.
Right.
There's not like house after house after house 5 miles down the road. Or, you know, it's there's big tracts of land in between. All of them have big, and that's a big part later.
Yeah.
It's just how much land everybody has and how it's being used.
Yeah. She does land in a few places in the meantime. She goes to the Last Hearth, which is the stronghold of House Umber, which is a very northern house.
They're the last house before the wall.
They are the last house before the wall. That's the last big house, should we say, before the wall. Yeah. And there's some other smaller keeps and holdfasts. And it says, to the surprise and delight of their lords, who are probably like, oh, fuck, winter's coming. I can't feed you. Your dragon.
I was thinking that. I'm like, surprise and delight. They're like, holy shit, that's a dragon. Oh my god.
Are we going to fucking feed you and your fucking dragon? What do dragons eat?
Sheep.
Yes.
And some of her people kind of trailed behind her, but most of them stayed at Winterfell at that point. But it says that her first sight of the wall from above took Alysanne's breath away. Her grace would later tell the king. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to arrive at a 700-foot high wall made of ice, arriving on the back of a dragon.
Yeah, she literally has a view no one else in the world has had before. It's really cool.
I'm not entirely... Did Aegon the Conqueror go up to the wall?
Not clear.
I don't know if he did.
I don't know that he
Not
did.
clear.
I don't think so. I don't think there's ever indication of him
there is a
traveling.
He went to Winterfell.
No,
I don't know that he went further north than that.
No. So that must have been absolutely amazing. Like, what a view. So I'm. If anyone's listening to my audio, like, is that the person pouring a glass of wine? Yes, I am. Because my technology keeps failing and I need a glass of wine. Yeah, so basically she gets to Castle Black. And that's where they, as they call them, the Black Brothers, taking the Black, the Night's Watch, the Brotherhood. Lots of names for them. Is that all of them? Is that all the names you have for the Night's Watch? I can't think of any more. But there's many names of them.
There's many names for them. But it's a little bit worrisome at first for her to go there. She has a few possible enemies there from...
Yes. If you remember...
From before.
Yeah, if you remember, they sent up a lot of poor fellows and warrior sons that had been sent up there after they were made illegal and disbanded. Who, if you remember, they had a slight revolt and they had to send Alaric's elder brother against them to defeat them, essentially, and get rid of them. So... Yeah, it's that caused a big problem because they actually ended up, Alaric's older brother actually ended up dying, and that's how Alaric ended up being the Lord of Winterfell. He's a second son. So it's a little bit of an interesting one, but Alaric Stark sent ravens ahead to say she's coming, and the Lord Commander, Lothor Burley, which is a name and a half, isn't it? Hello, I'm Lothor Burley. He had so different... This to me is Northern hospitality. You might not have a lot, but you'll give what you can. And you've got 800 people. He had 800 of his finest men to receive her. That to me is Northern hospitality. And that night the Black Brothers feasted on Queen. They feasted on Queen? No, they didn't eat the Queen.
I hope not.
That would be,
that's a whole other story.
They feasted the Queen on mammoth meat. Yum, yum, yum.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I was like...
Mammoths. Willy mammoths, baby. They shaved the hair off first. Don't worry, it's fine. And then they washed it down with mead and stout. That's a lot of heavy booze.
Heady booze.
Yeah,
very much so. Yeah,
like stout is a strong flavour.
I love stout.
Do you?
I love mead too.
I do enjoy a good mead, but stout's a bit much for me.
Stout.
And there's a really interesting moment here because she visits the wall. She goes to the top of the wall. And he says, this is the next day. And he says, this is where the world ends. Which I think is a very interesting thing to say, given that I reckon Alysanne maybe knows Aegon's prophecy about the Song of Ice and Fire that we've talked about before. and if she does, if someone said that to you, this is where the world ends, would you have shivers down your spine at that moment in time?
It's funny because I don't think she knows, but I do think that Jaehaerys would. And so I just think, like, imagine him getting the letter about what happens next.
But I do think, I genuinely think that no one has said to the Targaryens that only king and heir must know this prophecy. I think that's a ridiculous way to have that. I think Aegon and his two sisters knew about it. I think it would be totally bonkers to only have one person know. But I think the work that Alysanne does around the wall makes me absolutely believe that she knows about Aegon's prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire, that there is a terrible winter coming, which brings around the end of men. And I do believe that she knows about it and takes it very seriously. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why she wanted to go up to the wall and wanted to definitely, this is what I was saying earlier about the prophecy, was even though Jaehaerys couldn't necessarily go, they were like, not just because Alaric is a difficult character and we need to make sure we don't upset this prickly person, but we need to go north because the whole point of this prophecy is that, the end of the realms of men comes from an icy winter coming from the north. One of us needs to go north and see what's happening up there. And she goes up to the wall. One of us needs to see this. And then to have him say, oh, this is where the world ends. Like, that is... I get goosebumps when I read that bit.
Yeah. It's big.
It's big. Here the world ends, he said, gesturing.
Yeah. And then it's funny, though, because, like, here the world ends, but, like, you're still looking over the wall at world.
I know. I know.
I just thought it was insulting to the, to the free folk.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it absolutely is.
Literally half the continent is spreading out in front of your face. And
yeah, we don't even know
exactly.
how big the lands of Always Winter are because they're not mapped. But I'm like, that's rude. But it's like shivers down my spine, but also you're rude to all the people who live north of the wall very happily. Yeah.
Well, they don't really obviously think of them as people. So.
No. They don't.
No. They don't. Exactly.
We like...
They're boogeyman. I just read a chapter in one of my history books about how, like, this particular author wrote, like, a scholarly article calling anyone who was, like, othered at the time, so, like, Moors and people who were accused of witchcraft and stuff like that, were, like, the boogeyman of their time. So now when I think of the wildlings, they're, like, the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Totally. But he's like, I'm sorry about all the food and drink. It's not fancy for you. We do what we can. Our beds are out and our holes are cold and our food is... She's like, oh, it's nourishing, sweetie, and that is all I require. It will please me to eat as you do. And this is kind of stuff I'm like, is this based on propaganda? Did she really say that? I mean, she probably said something like that, but it just... she's so genteel all the time. Yeah.
I was going to say, who has reported these words? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, who wrote this down?
Yeah.
Probably. Well, they did have a maester, so maybe there was a...
The wall had a maester, yes, that's
some
true.
sort of maester reporting.
But was he, like, up on the wall with them in this moment?
Mm-hmm, indeed.
It's probably like the Lord Commander was like, she was gracious about it. It was fine.
And we get... This is the bit that is something I've been really looking forward to talking about this whole time.
Yeah.
And that is the bit where we get to learn about Silverwing. So brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and every gender in between. She talks about, it is noted, so it talks about the dragon, because the people are like, wow, there's a dragon, we've never seen one of these before. So she talks about Silverwing and says that she does not like this wall, in quotes. Though it was summer and the wall was weeping, the chill of the ice could still be felt whenever the wind blew, and every gust would make the dragon hiss and snap. And then further, she says, thrice I flew Silverwing high above Castle Black, and thrice I tried to take her north of the wall. But every time she veered back south again and refused to go. Never before has she refused to take me where I wished to go. I laughed about it when I came down again, so the Black Brothers would not realise anything was amiss. but it troubled me then, and it troubles me still. And apparently that's what she wrote to Jaehaerys.
Mm-hmm.
And that also gives me shivers down the old spine. Like, that is...
Yeah, that's what... If Jaehaerys does know the prophecy, this is a big thing for him. He must have been like, this is not good.
Yeah. I mean, I just... When I first read... I mean, let's be honest. When I first read this, I was so like, what the hell about it? Like, I don't know. I really want to hear... Lady Gwyn, I want to hear your thoughts about this. We have a Patreon question about this bit, so I'm going to add it in here. We normally have it in the middle, but it's specifically about this. Hope wants to ask, she's from our Grumpkins and Snarks level, says, was Silverwing prevented from going beyond the wall by some magical force, or was it the dragon's choice, or a bit of both? So, Lady Gwyn, I would like you to answer that question if you don't mind.
I have an answer, but I wonder if you want me to save it for your spoiler section, because my answer is going to involve A Song of Ice and Fire spoilers. So I'll tell you that the short answer is more the latter, but maybe a bit of both. But also my supporting evidence involves quotes from The Dance with Dragons.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll definitely talk about it more after in the spoiler section. But.
So I think there's
a big one.
Yeah, there's a magical force there, but I think that was it's ice magic, which is probably, let's face it, the antithesis of fire magic. So I think the dragon was shying away from it more than being like magically prevented. I think it was a sensory thing for the dragon. I don't think it was like an invisible barrier where she just physically couldn't fly through it. I think she was just like, no, F this. Don't like this. Do not recommend. I am a creature of fire. I do not recommend this icy thing.
0 stars.
Yes, exactly. 0 of 10. We're leaving. No?
Yeah.
Mom, let's go. We're done here.
Yeah.
It's cold. You pack me a coat. I don't like it.
But it's fascinating because it's not the only place and it's not spoilery to say because we do talk about lore here and lore in castles. It's not the only place that is mentioned that magical things cannot happen in. And it says that the wall has magic. When it was built by Brandon the Builder, when was Brandon built? They always say 1,000 years ago. That's what they always say. I don't know if
10,000.
I'm assuming it's always 1,000.
Well, the last long night was 10,000, maybe 8, maybe 4.
But maybe 8, maybe 4.
Maybe 10. I don't know.
But whenever the wall was built,
numbers.
Magic was built into the wall, apparently by the children of the forest, or they helped build it, and giants, as we mentioned, helped to build the wall all that time ago to keep out the others
and themselves.
Terrible magic to keep out
themselves. Yeah.
The
giants were like, you guys can stay over there. This is ours.
Yeah. To keep
Which,
out whatever darkness and terrible shit was, could have killed the realms of men, as it mentions in Aegon's prophecy. I'm fascinated that there are other places that we've talked about in the lore, in like Storm's End. We've talked about there, where we've wondered whether dragons can land, because there's been mention about dragons in Storm's End and things like that, and because
they don't shy away from Storm's End. We see, at least in the show, and that we talked about it in the book. Later.
But there are other places that Brandon the Builder has built and put magic into those walls. Apparently, Winterfell, Storm's End, Old Town. Is the High Tower the High Tower Battle Isle? Is that another one? No, it's not. Is it? Did Brandon the Builder not do anything down there?
I don't
feel like he did.
Think so.
I think it
predates him.
Predates him, doesn't it? Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What do you think of Hope's question, Steph?
Oh my god. I mean, I could talk about it for days. Silverwing refusing to go beyond the wall. So, without being too spoilery, we know that certain things cannot pass from the wall. So, and I'll talk about it more in the spoiler section.
Maybe we just saved the question.
And
for
we could save it, but I'm just saying, like, I do wonder if there's I feel like there is a magical element to it. And a dragon's choice. I do think there's maybe both. Because dragons are a magical being. Alysanne is not.
Yeah.
She is a human. Maybe godlike. If Targaryens are godlike, closer to gods than men.
She's an exceptional human.
Exceptional human. Targaryen exceptionalism. I find it chilling. Pun intended. Pun completely intended. I find it chilling that Silverwing wouldn't go north of the wall. I love that George has added that in. I wasn't expecting it to happen. And when I read it, I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, I feel like everybody was like, everybody collectively reading Firebows.
Yeah, everyone took a deep breath in.
Gasp.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Very, very exciting.
There's a few moments where it's just like, ooh, and that's one of them in this
Definitely.
book. It's very good.
Yeah. There's the Alyssa Farman's eggs on this bit as well. Is definitely one.
Yes, Alyssa Farman's eggs, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, it's. But we'll talk about that more. I think much more in the spoiler section. Sorry to everyone.
Yeah.
Who's not spoilering?
Just a little tease.
Just
there.
But don't you think that's amazing that the dragons who will follow? We've talked about dragon lore, and the connection between dragon riders and dragons and what they will do. Like Balerion went wherever Balerion wanted to go with Rhaena on riding.
We had a great episode with Senrixian.
Yeah, we did.
Talking a ton about dragon lore.
We did. We talked about it a lot. And George has released a lot about dragon stuff. And very recently. And to have a dragon absolutely refuse, just would not go there.
Yeah.
Is so interesting to me. Oh my god, we just need Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, and then we'll all be fine and happy.
And Fire and Blood Part 2, and all the Duncan eggs, and
we need all that.
Yeah, never ending. I feel sort of like Lady Gwyn. Like, I feel like Silverwing just fully had the heebie-jeebies about this spot. She's just like, I don't like it. No.
Well, if you take the part right before... That they talk about her not wanting to fly over the wall. It says that it was summer, the wall was weeping. The chill of the ice could be felt whenever the wind blew, and every gust would make the dragon hiss and snap. So I think he's establishing that Silverwing is like, the hell?
I don't like
She's
it.
not
This
cozy
is
there.
not my favorite place we've ever gone.
No.
No. Yeah, and I have more to say in the spoiler section too.
Also,
for sure.
I mean, think about it. I don't know at what altitude a dragon normally flies at, like, but 700 feet is high. Like, that's that's as high as a basically skyscraper, a 60 or 70 story skyscraper. Is that a normal? I'm
so curious now. Like, what's the next tallest building in Westeros or structure in Westeros?
The high tower.
The high tower.
The high tower. Yeah. And how high, and you can see the wall from the high tower. That's how high is the wall.
Oh, can you? That is the question.
The high tower is like, it's taller than the wall, I think. I'd have to look it up, but it's like 100-story building. It's a nuts. Well, obviously it's fantasy. Yeah. We could talk about.
I think even George. Didn't George
understands
say when
that he made mistakes. Yeah,
he was like, "Oh, 700 feet's actually really, really big." And whoops.
Yeah, he was like, "Whoopsie daisy."
He looked up at something that was like 100 feet tall, and he was like, "Oh, maybe that's what I meant."
Whoopsie daisy. Yeah. But I've said it now, so let's double down. Let's stick to what we said.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
no retconning this.
No, definitely not. I do think. Perhaps the dragon's skittishness, like in Valyria, I've often talked about how the others and the northerny areas, that's a word, northerny, are the direct opposite.
It's a Scottish word, obviously.
It's definitely a Scottish word. Are direct opposites to, like, Valyria, the Valyrians, song of ice and of fire. Dragons are made of fire. There's also the lands, like, I'm pretty sure there's the lands of always summer, or the summer lands, or something like that. I wanna say that, but I'm doubting myself now. But the Valyria is a land of fire, of volcanoes, of heat. So to have them in their literal opposite must be very difficult for a magical being like that to be. Imagine a being that is powered by fire and blood, quite literally, like dragons are fire and blood. And they're, you know, to then be somewhere where it's like, no, this is ice. Everything about this space is ice and cold. And the more northern of the wall you get, the more ice you get, the more freezing, the more cold, and the more the beings here are made of ice. And I think those two magics meeting like that is quite extraordinary, to be perfectly honest. My feelings are like just to have those two polar opposites meeting, and no wonder Silverwing is, you know, like you say, Lady Gwyn, skittish.
Yeah.
That's
what year are we in right now?
57 AC.
So you've already covered 54. So I can talk about something from 54 AC.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is when they traveled, Alysanne and Jaehaerys traveled around. They went to Old Town. Silverwing landed on top of the high tower, and then later they went to Storm's End, and she went inside Storm's End. So while the high tower maybe isn't of the same magical ilk as like the Wall and Storm's End, it certainly is it's an unusual structure, and it's mysterious, and it probably has some sort of sorcery attached to it. So the fact that the dragon Silverwing didn't have any problem with the high tower shouldn't seem, you know, I think maybe this is one of the things Alysanne was referencing. She's never done anything. She's always done what I asked her to do before. So I think I think it's got to be more about the ice, the actual physicality of the ice.
There is also, this is definitely something for the spoiler section, but I'm just going to touch on it for a minute here and like plant the bug. But there is speculation that maybe their bond would break had they gone over. Such as certain other characters' bonds breaking. So the magic, because of the magic in the wall, could the bonds between the dragon and the rider break? Interesting.
Spoiler section, because I have a...
We'll talk about it more in the spoiler section. Yeah, I just wanted to like plant the bug, plant the seed.
That, so.
Okay. Make a note of it so that we can talk about it later.
I do not have any strong feelings, but I want to talk about every angle we can with it. So, yeah.
So... the next part of the story, we get a little bit about the Queen saw some wildlings for the first time. Or, well, no. She'd already met our wildling at the Manderleys at White Harbour.
Yeah.
We find out a little bit about what the people at the wall do. It sounds pretty grim. They cut off the ears of people who have come over for their first time. If they've climbed over the wall and tried to get into Westeros, they have their ears cut off. I wonder if the wildling she saw in White Harbour had no ears.
So
I know. I wondered. There's a few things with ears I wondered about. Yeah, we'll talk about that more later.
You know, first of all, Gildain has here contradicted himself, because he tells that story about the one in White Harbour, and then he says, here she saw her first wildlings. You're like,
oh yeah,
like literally 2 pages ago, Gildain. Like,
well, yes, because she's not a wildling anymore. She's been domesticated.
Yeah.
And the ear thing really upsets me, because in A Song of Ice and Fire, and this is not spoilery as far as the plot, it's a physical description of people. There's loads of people who don't have effing ears because of frostbite.
Yeah, because of
including somebody you meet in the very, very first chapter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Of A Game of Thrones.
I was going to say the same thing.
So my thought was like, oh, how do they know that this person lost their ear because you cut it off and it wasn't because some... No, they don't give them
obviously. The benefit of the doubt.
It's very upsetting.
They cut off their ears,
and
if they come over again with their ears cut off, they chop off their heads. So you're absolutely right that if they've lost their ears from frostbite, which is a thing.
Perhaps you should just stay away.
Stop fucking doing that. Yeah. Don't cut people's heads off.
Yeah.
Perhaps you should ask them what they need that they're trying to get over
I
the
know.
wall for in the first place.
I find the wall wildlings
Be a good neighbor.
situation
State Farm is there.
utterly bizarre because they're just people who were just, they were on this side of the wall when the wall was built, you know. Wildling culture is slightly different, but they're first men as well. So this must have been how the first men were when they first came over from Essos. So I find it quite jarring in a way that they're so anti the wildlings, but there's that certain stuff I could talk about in the spoiler section, but I am wondering, like, the Night's Watch vows are talking about the guarding the realms of men, and that their perhaps original purpose to defend against darkness coming from the north, that perhaps this has been forgotten about, that they're just thinking about wildlings.
Yeah, it's quite lost to them at this point.
But is it that lost to them? I don't think it's totally lost to them. I think Torrhen Stark probably, and I think it's there.
Yeah.
I think it's there still. But I feel like I get the impression that it's just really bored. Like, it's bored men at the end of the earth who've got nothing better to do than to taunt a group of people who are, like, struggling to survive, and they've got nothing better to do. They've kind of forgotten a little bit about their original purpose, but not totally, but they're just bored, so they'd find it easier just to torture and behead a bunch of people who annoy them.
8,000 years of sentry duty. I mean, it's got to be the worst gig collectively that anyone has ever had.
And it's cold.
Yeah.
It's not even like
Freezing
it's
your bullets
cozy or
off.
anything.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
It's I'm uncomfortable with it because I like the wildlings a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, she had a nice time. Alysanne had a nice time. She listened to some people singing who'd been singers before taking the black. She enjoyed all the songs, ballads, war songs, bawdy barracks tunes, and she went into the haunted forest, which is just north of the wall. And it just very careful to mention that she had 100 rangers riding escort. She's fine, just in case they saw a dirty wildling. Yes. And she, interestingly, she wants to see some of the other forts along the wall, and so First Ranger Benton Glover, House Glover, is a northern house with. I actually enjoy them. They're quite literal. Their sigil, it's just some hands with gloves on.
Yes, yeah, it is.
I like that. Yep. Like, we're House Glover. Let's have some gloves. I like it. Let's have a glove. I actually really like House Glover. I like them. They're in the Wolfswood. Deepwood Mott. I'm all on board for House Glover. I enjoy them. But he was the first ranger, which shows you that it was lots of, like, higher lords who would be part of the Night's Watch as well. Like, a Glover is a big named person. You know?
But I've never heard of a Burley before.
No, I've never heard of a Burley.
There is a Burley.
Yeah.
There's actually a couple in the main series. They're one of the mountain clans.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was a mountain clan.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. That all ties
their
in
sigil
a little bit too.
is, speaking of interesting sigils,
A knife.
Their sigil is a white knife, so I assume that they come from somewhere near the headwaters of the white knife.
The white knife. Yeah, totally. I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting knife as well, which reminds me a little bit of, if you've seen Hot D, the knife that Viserys has the prophecy on. Yeah, the dagger that the prophecy is written on. It's very similar to it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were Burleys.
Yeah.
I won't. That's spoilery. Never mind. It's like a big spoiler, so forget that.
The spoiler section. The spoiler section, I think, is going to be quite big this week.
It's such a rabbit hole.
Nosy along through this stuff to get to that.
But she goes along with Benton Glover to the Nightfort. The Nightfort and Snowgate. Nightfort is a pretty terrifying name in itself. The Nightfort. And they spent the night there. She said it was beautiful. It was exhilarating as it was cold, though the wind up there blows so strongly that I feared I was about to sweep us off the wall. However, the Nightfort she found grim and sinister. apparently, she said to Jaehaerys, it is so huge the men seemed dwarfed by it, like mice in a ruined hall. And there is a darkness there, a taste in the air. I was so glad to leave that place.
I think that's so interesting. It's almost like the Nightfort is like whispering to her that she doesn't belong there. But spoilery-ish, but she's definitely not the only person to feel that way about the Nightfort.
The Nightfort is a fascinating place. Right? If you don't know about the Nightfort, yes. I mean, the Nightfort is like Westeros' version of the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, really.
Yeah. If you don't know a ton about the Nightfort, if you want to know more about the Nightfort, I was on a panel a few years ago for Ice and Fire Con. It was a virtual panel during COVID with Chase and Lord Travis and Scad, and we talked all about the Nightfort, so you can find that on their Twitter if you're looking for something to do. Good little shout out.
It's got a very, very dark history though, and I was going to talk a little bit. It's not spoilery to talk about it because it's chronologically historical, so it's not spoilery, I don't believe.
It's lore. It's lore. Yep.
It is the largest castle on the wall. It's old. It's the oldest, and it's twice as big as the one she's been staying at in Castle Black. And it has a dark history. Now, Radio Westeros has actually talked a lot about the Nightfort in some of their spooky episodes. And Lady Gwyn, do you want to tell us about some of the scary stories of the Nightfort?
Well, there is one big scary story that is really nodded to, I think, in this statement that she makes. The men being dwarfed by the Nightfort like mice in a ruined hall. And you think, if you know the lore, your mind immediately goes to, or could they be white rats? The story of the Rat King with his children all turned into rats, baking the son of an Andal king in a pie. And oh my goodness. I mean, the imagery right there. But there just are so many ghost stories. There's Mad Axe, and I'm trying to think of
Brave Danny Flint.
Yeah.
There's another one.
A female Flint who was trying to join the Night's Watch, who then got raped and murdered when they found out she was a girl.
Yeah. Yep.
The Rat Cook, if we can summarise that, was he was a human.
It was a nod to guest right,
but it was a human person who was angry at an Andal king for something, I can't remember what, and he killed his sons and then served the sons in the pie. But it wasn't the fact that he killed the sons that was the problem. You were allowed your vengeance. The problem is the gods were offended by him breaking guest right. And so they turned him into a rat.
But baking them in a pie is perfectly fine.
Baking them is fine.
As long as you don't break guest right. And, if characters happen to learn and evolve from that story, and, who are we to say in the main series if somebody listens to that story and says,
Yeah, exactly.
I've taken some notes, and I'll be sure not to break guest right. Thank you for that. Yeah. You also have the 79 Sentinels.
79 Sentinels. That's really big with the magic. Yep. Two of the wall.
King Sherritt calling down his curse on the Andals of old. There's another. This is the one I was thinking of because there's there's Mad Axe, of course, who sounds like basic your just bog standard serial killer with his blood dripping off his knife. But you also get the thing that came in the night with the Prentice Boys.
Yes, the thing in the night. We don't even know what that is.
We don't know what the thing is.
The thing in the night.
No. But it was something that these these kids kept seeing. Multiple apprentice boys kept seeing this thing that came in the night, and then within a year, 3 boys died and a 4th went mad. And then when it came next was seen some years later, it had the apprentice boys shambling along behind it in chains.
In chains.
Oh my god, it's so creepy.
So-
I'm literally getting
Creepy.
goosebumps. Like,
I know. I'm not a horror person at all, but it's the Nightfort is George's opportunity to dive
He
into
is
this
a horror
and high
person.
fantasy.
So this is his.
It's just he loves it there. Yeah.
the 79 Sentinels is hot, horrific. They were defectors. They were were they House Dustin? I want to say Dustin. Riswell. I knew it was one of those.
Riswell.
And they ran away to get back to them, and then the guy sent them back, and then killed them, and then shoved them into the ice of the wall.
I think they were
buried
alive in the wall
to die and sealed in.
But it actually is a little bit there's a little bit of something to that, because and then the Lord Riswell was so sad that he had to do that to his son.
He did it himself.
He asked to be interred in the wall with them.
Yeah,
but he didn't. He died and then was buried, though. He wasn't buried alive in the wall. But they will always be watching north, is.
I have heard a very tinfoily theory, and I'm trying to remember who I heard it from, but I can't remember where it was. But it's serious tinfoil hat. It's funny because last time, Beth, it was you with the tinfoil hat on, and now I'm taking it from you.
Yeah, it was.
But I'm sure
it's usually you, though.
I know,
so I'm handing it back.
But I can't. I wish I could remember who it was who said it. But someone said that some of the magic in the wall might be human sacrifice anyway, that there's weirwood trees and human sacrifice in there, and that the 79 Sentinels, these guys who were essentially sacrificed to the wall magic, have helped build up the wall magic, and that's kind of what helps hold up the wall, which is pretty disturbing to think of.
Hold it up
fortify,
or
hold it up. That's what I mean. As in, it's kind of part of the magic of the wall.
Keep it
strengthening it.
Ice and blood.
Yeah. But for some reason, freaky, spooky, bizarre stories seem to happen around the Nightfort. It is just a weird bleh
and it was where the Night King
we haven't even mentioned the
resided.
Night King. Oh my god, you guys. What were we thinking? The Night King. I was I think that's all of them, isn't it? No, the bloody Night King. Of who?
The Night King's probably the biggest one.
Why did we forget that one?
Yeah, well, that and the Rat Cook. The Night King was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who decided that he was going to crown himself and take a wife. And he took for a wife what is probably an otherish creature, otherworldly appearing
Apparently,
woman.
she had skin as white as the moon and ice like blue stars, and her skin was cold as ice. And he gave his seed to her, and he gave his soul to her.
Oh, he planted his little seed.
He
Wow.
planted his little seed in his soul, and and obviously he was twisted by a terrible woman. It was her. She did it to him.
Yeah. She did it to him. It's so funny. It's very reverse on a Hades Persephone story.
Yes, absolutely it is, yeah.
It's she's the Hades and he's
Absolutely.
the Persephone who is entranced by her.
And apparently he bound the Night's Watch brothers to his will, and he could make them do things with sorcery. And they decided that they would rule the Nightfort and they called her the Corpse Queen. So there's the suggestion that she was dead.
They did.
The king of Winter, as in the king in the north, in Winterfell,
The king
and the
in
king
north,
beyond the wall,
and the king beyond the
Joramun,
wall,
banded together because they're basically this is terrible. We need to get rid of this guy. Because they thought he was making sacrifices to whatever weird sorcery is north of the wall, and so they decided to get rid of him together. And apparently, once he was killed,
and they washed his name from history.
Oh, old Nan knows his name.
Nothing about him.
old man was
knows
his
everything.
name a Flint or a Bolton?
Yeah.
Old Nan was his wife.
Yeah, probably. I've heard a theory that old Nan is a child of the forest, so probably. Yeah.
I have to. Yeah.
The other thing about the Nightfort is that there is a door in the Nightfort that only a brother of the Night's Watch can go through. There is a magic that is only a brother of the Night Watch can go through, and it looks like a mouth, and it is painted black and white. it looks like a person's mouth, and you have to say particular words to do with the vows.
I know, that'll be fun. That's like spoilery. I feel like that'll be fun to talk about.
It is spoilery, but I
get to
feel like
cover
it's
the main
part of
series,
the lore.
but-
Like, there is this weird door to the outside
It is,
world.
but like Alysanne
She
didn't know anything
about that, but it is in the lore of the Nightfort that basically there is this gate
It is.
that exists, that only the Black Gate, that only Night's Watch brothers can get through if they say certain words, and it is just a weird feckin' place. It is just, if you like, they mention in the book, like, she's like, there's a darkness here, a taste in the air, I was so glad to leave. And that's all they say about the Nightfort. But it is such
I feel like it was like a tease for, not a tease, but like a little treat or a tidbit for us who've read the main series, you know, that's like, ooh, it's like a name drop in here with like a big, you know, something that is so big and stands out so much to readers of the main series.
Yeah.
Yes. But she didn't like the Nightfort, and she wanted to make the wall stronger. They left a lasting impression on her.
She says that a queen needs to know how to listen. So she listened to the men of the Night's Watch. And apparently, according to the maesters, listening to them and the eternal devotion of the Night's Watch. The eternal devotion. Definitely not maester nonsense at all. So, but she listened to them, and she's like, you need another castle between Snowgate and Icemark, and the Nightfort is crumbling, and it's massive, and it's ruinous, and blah blah blah, and you need to abandon it and build a smaller castle. And but the Night's Watch didn't have the money to build anything new, and she's like, that's fine, I'll sell some of my jewels, I got loads of them, I'll give you the money myself. Which is pretty cool.
Nothing like flaunting your privilege a little bit, but that's okay. Her heart was in the right place.
I did like that. I have a good many jewels, she said. I've got so many, I'll sell some of mine.
It took 8 years, but they did get Deep Lake built.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's a statue of Alysanne outside it to this very day. And that's when the night...
Snowgate.
No, outside Deep Lake.
Yeah.
And then the Nightfort was abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they renamed Snowgate.
They did to Queen's Gate. And they left the Nightfort. I mean, to be fair... If someone said to you, would you like to leave the Nightfort and go somewhere else, even if it's not finished, I'll be like, fuck yes.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you and goodbye.
I mean, it's like, you know, you could live in this dirty old castle ruinous with no plumbing and no heating, or you could have a brand new semi-detached that's you know, easy to heat and
exactly.
You know,
Yes.
within
And
easy
doesn't
walking
have spooky
distance to
ghosts
services
everywhere.
in town. And no, I'll take that one.
No brainer. Just imagine that the guys who had to work at the Nightfort for years and years is probably like walking back into the sun, getting to leave there. Like the way that place would probably suck the joy out of you. I imagine it's probably a little bit like America.
Oh, whoa.
Sometimes.
Beth, you went there.
Sorry. I just, with recent political situations,
politics-free podcast.
comes to mind.
It just might be good context to say that this episode was recorded on the 8th of November 2024. So, and the 7th,
Yes.
7th,
Yes,
7th.
We're trying
I
to
was
keep it
alluding
in, but
to.
it keeps creeping in.
It's the 8th of November here anyway. Yeah.
Exactly.
We're all fine.
Exactly.
Like the
It
thing
is
that came in the
very
night.
much like the thing that came in the night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mad X, all that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. All of the above.
But the thing is, Alysanne has a bee in her bonnet, and she's like, I wanted to talk to some girly girls. Can I speak to some women?
Find me your women.
Lord
Bring
Burn's
me
like-
your women.
the Night's Watch is like, we don't have
women
any.
here. There's no women in the north.
There's no women
Please
here.
stop asking about women. What is a woman? And then, I love this language. Can we all take a moment just to appreciate the language here? Until finally, with great reluctance, he escorted her to a village south of the wall. Where there were some women. It's like, finally
allowed that there might be just a few women kind of
there
close
might
by.
be some women
Maybe.
nearby.
Yeah.
Some men.
So there's there's women in one place I've heard of, like in a place called Molestown, which was just south of the wall.
I mean,
It's
we
called
are men.
Molestown. I love this. Yeah, they are men. He's got a point, but there are women that exist nearby. Like,
Yeah.
fuck's sake. Like, Molestown is called Molestown because most of it is underground because it's so cold all the time.
Yep. I really want to visit Molestown. If it was a real place, I would be like so eager to see this like underground town.
I would get claustrophobic
I think that's so
quickly.
cool.
I'd be like, I'm out of there. I don't want to go underground. Thank you very much. But he does explain. He's like, oh, well, there are women there, but some of them are ladies of loose virtue.
Harlots!
Harlots, exactly. they're not very respectable women. He's like, yeah, the men of the Night's Watch, they don't have wives, but they are men, and they have penis needs.
I love this part when he has to explain to her that some men, not all of them, because certainly not him, definitely not him
Not all of
himself,
them. Yeah.
but some men have certain needs. Certain needs.
Yes.
Just wink, wink.
Hashtag not all men have
Definitely
certain
not
needs.
me.
And she's like, whatever, it's fine. I just want to meet.
Just like women. Just show me your women.
Show me your
Just like,
women.
bring out your women. She's like that guy in...
I'm not,
Yeah.
no judgment. I'm not kink shaming. Just introduce me to the women.
But they literally, in this book, it's so fucking rude. So she held a women's court among the whores and strumpets of Molestown. Like, they don't hold strumpets.
Strumpets.
Like, what the
I'll
hell?
give you a strumpet with butter and jam on top. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. This is my new favorite word for women. Strumpet.
I love a strumpet.
Yeah.
With a buttery strumpet. Do you guys have crumpets in the States and
Yes,
Canada?
we do.
Do you have crumpets?
strumpet.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
we do.
Because they're so fucking good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Covered in butter.
I think
But
our
strumpets covered in
crumpets come
butter is
from
probably pretty
Canada.
good. Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't believe they
Oh, I
actually
believe that.
make them in this country because that would be, I don't know.
They're very easy to make yourself, by the way.
Blasphemy.
They're very easy to make yourself. I've got lots of recipes. So if you ever, if anyone ever needs a crumpet,
Interesting.
please let me know because I will provide you with a recipe for an emergency crumpet.
I might hit you up.
They're so
for-
easy to make.
for a-
And they're so good. You just drown them in butter and they're so fucking amazing.
I'm so hungry.
But I
If I had a crumpet
Go
right
eat a
now, if I had a
crumpet.
crumpet in this house,
could have a crumpet.
I would be putting in an
I'm
order for a
absolutely-
crumpet and a cup of tea from downstairs.
Oh my god. Hey, hang on a
Yes.
minute, Lady Gwyn.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, no doubt.
I know Yolk Boys are British, but are you secretly British? Because that is the most British. thing
He
I've
always
ever
tells
heard.
me that I'm his I'm more English than he is. So
Because a crumpet and a cup of tea is supremely British.
Yeah.
As a dinner choice.
I'm basically a
Um,
really great American English wife.
Good. Yeah. Good.
You ought to see
Well-suited.
my Sunday roast and my
Soulmates.
Oh my god. I'm
full
so
breakfast.
excited.
Yeah,
Yay! Exciting.
yeah. But I
But
digress.
I know how you feel about crumpets, but how do you feel about strumpets?
Butter and jam, please. Yeah. Same thing, really.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
you know what? The chat with
Yeah.
the whores and the strumpets, it's tantalizingly says that the tales that she heard would change the Seven Kingdoms forever. ...
Du-du.
And then we jump back to King's Landing because we need to talk about Jaehaerys for a second and blah blah blah. I was going to say Beth
yawning.
is literally yawning. right
Yeah.
now. We talk about it. It's
No one cares
Yeah.
about the king. Let
Yeah.
the women
Well, there's this interesting part in that. There is one interesting part there in that paragraph.
Yes.
When they finally make the peace and the the Prince of Penthouse just doesn't get the really strong end of the bargain, does he?
well, apparently the pact that
does not.
Jaehaerys makes,
No.
he finally makes that with the I don't know if it's Archon of Tyrosh and the Prince of Pentos. Apparently it's so shit that the Prince of Pentos is killed immediately when he gets back to Pentos. They're like, this is shit.
Sacrificed to their queer gods. Tell me more about your
I
queer
love a bit of
gods,
queer
please.
I love a bit of queer gods. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is one of them Chapel Roan? That would be great.
Yes.
I'd be up for that. But it doesn't sound like a particularly good, like he's done a particularly good job. I look at it and I'm still
No.
like, what is the purpose of this? Why have we got this occasional flip back to Jaehaerys? We've got really interesting stuff going on with Alysanne. What is the point of this with Jaehaerys? Please tell me.
Well, I think that's it. I think that, like, if Jaehaerys was there, it always would have been deferred to him. And so this was Alysanne's opportunity to just do what Alysanne wanted to do without what Jaehaerys wanted and people man-speaking to her.
Yeah, I mean, she's got, she's off doing her exciting thing, and Jaehaerys is doing this purposefully very boring Treaty of Eternal Peace. I mean, give me a break. It didn't last for 5 minutes.
Exactly. No.
So it was all a bunch of useless...
What's the opposite of eternal?
Yes, ephemeral. Like the ephemeral piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There we go.
But only then, after he has achieved his ephemeral piece, is Jaehaerys free to insert himself back into this, right?
Back into the story. When he's in Winterfell in no time, it's like he has the time traveler the time traveler from season 7.
I'm interested because I feel like saying if you believe in Aegon's prophecy, like that is from George, that Aegon had a prophecy about something. I don't know if it's exactly what Hot D said it is, but the reason Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros in the first place, thus says George, is because he had a prophecy about a terrible long night, the others, something coming from the north, something that would destroy the worlds of men. And I do believe that's why, if something would come up for the king, I know that I've said it before. I know that they've said that Alaric is difficult, and they didn't want to offend him. But I do think part of the reason why Alysanne still went ahead is because they thought, we need to go north. We need to see what the defences are like at the north. I do also believe that Torrhen Stark knew of the prophecy, probably had his own knowledge of a prophecy, and in the ravens that flew between him and Aegon, they discovered that they both knew of a prophecy that the north needs to be defended.
What do you think of the prophecy idea, Lady Gwyn? Like, do you... obviously, it's show canon, that sort of coming from George, is sort of intersected into the books. Like, how do you feel about that and the way it fits into these?
So the short answer is I don't think about it because Radio Westeros doesn't consider anything canon unless it's in the books. So I was very excited when it was in the show because it raised some, and I should say we don't think about it because we mentioned the possibility that there may have been a prophecy when we did our episode about the conquest and the Doom of Valyria in particular. So we just really were speculating and kind of riffing on the idea, but without being, it was more of a non-specific thing.
But it has been confirmed that George, this is what George says. It's not in the books yet, but it is.
Right. So, but we just don't know. I wouldn't take the way the show personally. So for what we do, I wouldn't take what the show presents as any more than I would take, some of the things that were maybe came from George, but in Game of Thrones, but they were presented with their spin on it. So George gave you a bullet point, and that's one thing. But
it's sort of like taking a So-Spake Martin and intersecting it.
Right. I mean, if George gives you specific information, that's one thing. If he gives you a kind of a bullet point and then you build a story around that, to me, I'm not going to take that story as...
Yeah.
And I guess that's why I don't believe everything in the show, because I feel like there was a prophecy, but I'm not entirely sure that the show represents everything that it is.
No, I think they just have got their own... George probably gave them some cryptic, there was probably a prophecy. And they were like, oh. Yeah, let's...
I think they've decided on the language of the prophecy, and that they've decided how the prophecy is passed down, because I don't believe if there was a prophecy that it would only be passed down between two, because that's so risky. So it just seems stupid to pass it down to one person who might die.
Well, I kind of agree with that, although I also think that the reason... Well, no, never mind. I can't talk about that because that's a huge spoiler, and it's a Fire and Blood spoiler. I will say that I think that the show associating the prophecy with the dagger, I just think it's the show. It's
I don't think the dagger
them
expansion's
trying
got anything
to connect with Game of Thrones rather than them actually trying to make
Yeah,
any
I agree.
rational,
Yeah. Yeah.
bit of information that came from George.
I totally agree. I don't think the dagger has anything to do with it. I think they're just trying to. That show. That's like.
Well, so
fandom.
they're trying to tie their own story into this dagger that exists in the books, but then existed in the show, and then was used in this weird way at the end of Game of Thrones.
Really,
In a,
impact, like end of game impactful.
and
way
it's
in the
just
show. It
not.
doesn't make any
That's
fucking
in my
sense, but
opinion.
yeah.
There's no way, no how it's going to end up. But well, anyways, here we are in some like.
Anyway, yeah. I think that I think there was a prophecy. Yes. Do I think it's verbatim what's in the show?
Yeah.
No.
I would agree with that.
But do I think that if there was a prophecy that it did maybe bond Torrhen and Aegon together? Yeah, like what Steph was saying there, I do believe that's probably how that went down. However, does Alaric know that now? Have with his older brother die or however?
Well,
that's
a great point because there will come a time in the Targaryen succession where I think that knowledge gets lost. I'd say that much without being spoilery, and I think that you've had that in Stark succession. Most likely that there has been. I mean, let's face it, Alaric, like you mentioned, Steph earlier, is a second son. His his brother was the heir. We don't know, we know who their father was, but we don't know how he ties into Torrhen, really.
No.
Yeah, and then even in the main series, it's this isn't really spoilery to say, but it's a major second son moment where he definitely wouldn't have had an opportunity to talk with Dad about what could be lore. So where it's just not. It doesn't end up being my big thing with a lot of the stuff in the story is how does it have thematic payoff later? Where is the relevance in making this happen? And it's I guess without having winds in A Dream of Spring, we don't really know, but.
What I would say if you believe, whether you believe the show's version of the prophecy or not, which I don't buy into the show's version. I believe that there is a prophecy, but I don't know what the prophecy is. But of Aegon, I believe that's one of the reasons why Alysanne absolutely had to go north, because someone needed to look at what the northern defences were. And I also believe that Jaehaerys not going has implications, because I think maybe not going north for as long as she did, not seeing what life was like north of the, as in the north of the wall, not seeing his, if his dragon had been the same and refused to go north, experiencing that magic, experiencing that fear, the fear in the Nightfort, I think he would have taken the prophecy more seriously, and perhaps potentially the prophecy would have been taken more seriously down the line and maybe wouldn't have been lost. And I think one of the reasons why he stays south is to give us a reason that's why one of the reasons he doesn't maybe pass all the stuff, because he didn't see all of it himself. He didn't experience the wall. He didn't experience everything. If you went to the wall and you felt that magic and you felt, oh, this is a magical place, then I think you would absolutely, and we'll see it later on when we talk about further things that Alysanne does in this chapter and some of the choices she makes. We'll do that. We're going to have a break in a minute, and after the break we'll talk about that. But I think some of the choices she makes after this point are very much to do with what she experiences, and Jaehaerys doesn't get it because he wasn't there. And I think that's one of the reasons he's kept behind, is to give him a reason to kind of be like, I'm not sure I do take it seriously. I think some of the things you're talking about are grumpkins and snarks. They're not real things. They're just sort of legends and stuff. But those are my thoughts anyway. And but he does eventually, once he signed his, what did you call it? Ephemeral peace.
The Treaty of Ephemeral Peace.
Ephemeral peace. And once he'd got that sorted, he went north and joined his wife at Winterfell. They'd had 6 months away from each other, and then they were back together. But that is where we will have a mini break. A little mini break, like we're lovers, like we're friends. Beth.
Sure. Well,
Would you like to thank our patrons from the Ice Spiders level?
Sure. We have Emily of the Eyrie, The King Beyond the Wall, Scad, and Julie Beth of Tarth.
I do. So thank you very much. And thank you to all of our other patrons as well who we haven't mentioned. We love you all so, so very much. You are the best.
We do.
You are the best.
The best.
We did have a question from Hope, which we answered earlier. So we normally have
We did. And we'll continue that.
We will continue that in the spoiler section, Hope. Thank you so much for that question because it's a really good one. But this is the point where we would normally answer a Patreon question, but we're going to answer that continually throughout the episode.
Mm-hmm. And this is
a hefty chapter. Before we move on, though, I want to tell you about an amazing thing that I went to the other day. There's a place near where I live called the Cocktail Geeks, and they have they're a cocktail place that does nerd themes like every 4 to 6 months. And the last one, I went to the last weekend of a House of the Dragon / Fire and Blood themed cocktail evening, and it was amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. Honestly, like, they're book fans, they're not just show people. So I was like, yeah. So I was like, I just need to check, are you book people? And they're like, no, we're book people too. Like, I don't believe all the servers there were totally book people, but like the people who own the place were like, no, we're book people. They've done an evening, they've had Stranger Things, they've done The Last of Us, which would freak me out. Like, I wouldn't want to necessarily capture a cordyceps thing from a cocktail drink. Thank you very much.
You said that they did drinks and stuff?
Yeah, so there's... Oh my god, I took pictures. They had such good drinks. And the themes, they had quotes from all the books to go with all the drinks.
That's fun. Post the pictures in the Discord. Let's let our Patreon see.
There were some really tasty ones.
Very cool.
Like I didn't enjoy the Winds of Winter. Which was a shame. It was blue, and I was really excited to have a blue because they were like, the Winds of Winter has to be blue, like the eyes of the others. I did not like that one. That was not good. But they had my partner had one 14 Flames, and that was like cool. In a glass cloche with like smoke coming out of it, and that was really cool. They had Milk of the Poppy. I tried the Hedge Knight, which I fucking loved. That was an apple based one with burnt
as
it was
should
apples
be.
and
Nice.
Calvados and burnt butter, and it was really strong. It was like blow your head off really strong.
Amazing.
That's and cool. The Azor High, I can highly recommend the Azor High, and that was really good. But they also had like a wine flight, so you could do a wine flight of all of Westeros, and you could do white wines of the Arbor or the red wines of Dawn and stuff like that, and I loved it. Yeah,
appropriate.
I just had a great time. But
cool. None of the clotted mare's milk, though?
Actually, there was a cocktail that was based on Tormund Giantsbane favorite drink of fermented goat's milk. And
there we go.
I'm trying, and that was called a proper northern drink, and it did have fermented goat's milk in it. And that was actually quite nice. But I just loved it, and I was just like, oh my god, the more places should have this. And I just love that they were book fans, and there was like book shit everywhere, and I was so happy. I was like, I walked in, and I was like, I'm so overexcited. I'm ridiculously overexcited. I can't.
Where was my invite?
So
I would have
sorry.
floated for that.
I even got a little shield with, because I ordered the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I got a little shield with like a hand shield with Duncan the Tall's sigil on it, which made me really
cute.
happy.
That's really cool. Very cool. I want a cool place like that.
And every cocktail they came, like, they told you the story of the cocktail, and I was like, a couple of times I was like, I'm just going to correct you there. There was a couple of I was like, oh, that's a slight mistake. That's not actually what happens in the books, because I'm sad and I know this shit. But
they're like, nerds, we can't do anything good for nerds.
Knows too much. But it was so nice, and I just had the best time, and I can't wait. I think the next one they're doing is like Fallout. I don't know what Fallout is. I think it's a game.
Yeah.
But
It's a game.
yeah, but they're doing that, and that's the next one. I left my jumper there though. I left my
Interesting.
jumper in there.
You'll just have to
I'm
go
gonna
back.
go back and see if I can get it back.
Oh dear.
I know, but it was like in like full black. I was like team black. I'm wearing black. But it was awesome. They had just loads of stuff there. They had the cat's paw dagger. They had stuff about dragon seeds. Like genuinely, when someone really cares about this stuff, it makes such a difference. Like it's not just a crappy whatever themed whatever. We'll just put
Cashing in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they really loved it, and they're like really into the books. They've actually done the books theme, like they've repeated it so many times because they love them so much. It is really
That's so
cool.
cool.
And like the care that went into every cocktail. I had a great time, and I wish I'd gone before it was the last weekend, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Like, next time I'm flying in for
we'll
it,
have
we'll go
to.
together.
I reckon they'll do it again because they've, like I said, they keep repeating the Song of Ice and Fire theme because it's a favourite of the owners.
Yeah.
But they're total nerds, and I just loved it. I was like, oh my god, one of the guys who served me, I can't remember what his name was, but he was really into D&D, and I was like, oh my god, there should be a D&D themed night here. Where whatever
There you go.
cocktail you get is based on your D20 roll. But I'm not going to a Last of Us one because fuck, if I catch cordyceps and I start eating people, I'm not fucking doing that.
No,
So,
thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
I've never seen it. I don't do.
It's not that scary.
Yeah, and yet you watch Game of Thrones.
It's the imagery can scare me. Like I'm creeped out by weird imagery, and so I'm worried that like just even from what I've seen
Yeah,
from commercials,
it is
would
creepy.
be too much for
It's
me.
creepy AF.
Yeah, I have a weird brain. I'm very nightmare prone, so I avoid a lot. So back to the story. So Jaehaerys has finally made his way to Winterfell. Alaric showed... Oh, I thought that we had passed this part, but anyway, Alaric showed Jaehaerys the crypts, tells the story about his brother and the Oathbreakers. That he had to send that because the king had sent the wrong type of people to the wall. Don't give him that. He's like, don't give him that choice. They don't know what it's like here. We had to put down a rebellion, handle your own shit in King's Landing. Please and thank
It's
you.
interesting.
Yeah.
First of all, a king arrives at King's Landing, at Winterfell, and is immediately swept
Winterfell.
to the crypts.
Lectured. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think
Oh,
of that.
hey, King, let's
Interesting.
go to the
Yeah.
crypts.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it was a little different.
Yes.
But,
Yep. Very good.
yeah,
good.
but
Yeah.
it's obvious. So in case anyone was wondering when the Night's Watch became the garbage can of Westeros, it was after this. Arguably,
Yes.
let's see, arguably 2 generations after this. We're in 57, so let's give it about 75 years, and then I think that'll be about when the Night's Watch becomes the garbage can of Westeros.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, we see it come up. I mean, it's like anything, I suppose, but like, so anytime there's major turbulence, it's just like, ooh, I don't know what to do with these. Let's just put them here. Like Maegor's rule, that's obviously where a lot of these guys
this
came
is what
from.
he's
It happens
talking
here.
about, these people.
Blackfire rebellions.
But this
these are
is so that,
Maegor's,
but that was obviously an outlier at this time, and even up until Jaehaerys
Yes.
and Alysanne aren't doing that, and then there'll be a later event where suddenly it becomes quite fashionable to request to go to the
Yes.
wall,
Yeah.
and I think after that maybe all bets were off, and everyone was like, oh. Exactly.
jail free
I'm
card.
here in the black cells, and they're going to cut my head off for thieving unless I demand to go to the wall. Okay, that it worked for those guys in that situation, so why not me? Yep.
Why not?
But I mean, obviously,
Yes.
the Night's Watch begins to capitalize on it too. So it's it's not like it was being foisted upon
it's definitely
them,
a supply
but
and
because certainly
demand.
by the time of the main
No.
series,
Yeah.
they're making the most of it. So.
Well, and like making plans to, I mean, spoilery, but making plans to go down and
Yeah, exactly.
collect. Like they
You
genuinely
got your
rely on
rapers and
that.
thieves,
Yeah,
Jon
yeah.
Snow. Your new brothers.
Yes. Yeah. So Lord Stark and King Jaehaerys got along. They were BFFs right off. No, that's not what happened. They were not They were not. They weren't good friends. Alysanne's a nice buffer. She sort of does that duty that she does so well and tries to have them connect better in her way, but it just doesn't really work out. There's too much shade in between them. But Alysanne has some ideas in the north. She obviously can see the need. She was at the wall. She can see the need of the wall, that they need more to be able to succeed and to thrive better and not be living on scraps and things. And so she decides that she wants to make a gift of land that isn't hers to give. Steph, do you want to...
It's not much to give, but I'd like to give that as a gift.
I think we should. Yeah. She's not wrong. She's not wrong, for sure.
Have you ever done that in real life? Lady Gwyn, Beth, have you ever been like, this isn't mine to give you, but I want to give it to you anyway?
I mean, she did ask. She did ask.
Yeah, no, I know.
Lord Alaric first.
She tried.
I'm teasing. But she does have to convince him.
Yeah.
She really, it's not like he's just like, yeah, I see what you mean. She really does have to, this is a plan that she concocted and executed well, but it wasn't like...
No.
I mean, at that point, he couldn't really deny her.
She charmed
by then.
She charmed him. She's charming.
She did.
What we're talking about is an extension of Brandon's gift. So when Brandon, the builder, built the wall, he's like, you can have this number of miles south of the wall to farm, to keep his land, and you can have as any landlord would, you can have the fruits of the land. You can take the incomes from it. You can have the animals, the food, blah, 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 blah. But it's, as Alysanne's like, it's not enough. And they need more because I think she says the soil is thin and stony, the hills unpopulated. The watch lacks for coin.
Yeah, it was like, obviously they gave this to the Night's Watch because it wasn't
like,
useful to them.
Should we give it to you? Great.
Yeah.
You can have it.
You can have it. Yeah. It's like when you go to one of those Christmas parties and they do that, you draw whoever gets the first, you know what I'm talking
Santa
about?
Something it's called.
Yeah. Bad Santa.
But I like it. I think we've got another question here. So we've had one question of, have you ever given away something that wasn't yours to give? Have you ever given someone a gift that was just a piece of crap and you knew it? Like Brandon. Have this lovely land. It is a pile of crap, but it's yours.
It's the thought that counts, Stef.
Yeah. It's the thought that counts. Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But she's like, the watch doesn't have much money, and then when winter comes, they're not have any food too. So she's like, let's double that. I'm going to take some lands from the people in the north, and they can double the amount of land that they have, and it's going to be called the new gift, not Brandon's gift, but the new gift. It's not really my land, but they can have it anyway because I'm the queen, so everything is my land. Everything technically is my land, really. It's like I said to my kids the other day when I borrow my eldest's tablet. He doesn't have an iPad. It's an off-brand tablet. And I use it to read my music for choir on a Monday. So on a Monday I go off to choir and I take his tablet so I can read it and not waste paper by printing it. And because he's turned 10, he wants to argue with me about a few things now. He's like, why do you have to take it? And why do you haven't even asked me? And I'm like, well, it was mine. I bought it for you. So technically, everything you own is mine. So
wait till
you may feel like this is yours, but I bought it for you, so it's mine.
Wait till they start driving cars and.
Oh my god, I am not ready for that one.
Oh man,
but but to me, this is more evidence that Alysanne really understands what the Night Watch is against, with a potential prophecy that something dangerous is coming from the north. I genuinely. Like I've said, I don't believe in everything that the show says of House of the Dragon. But I believe that there is a prophecy that they know of. And I think this is more evidence that she's like, the Night Watch needs more resources.
Yeah.
This is her arming them.
I mean, they all know, in the north, they know that there's another long night threatening. The Stark's words are literally a prophecy about the second long night happening. And obviously the North remembers too. So they know. sure. I mean, Alaric doesn't argue. I mean, he argues.
No.
Actually, this is very similar
like
to what happens like in the next scene when they get back to King's Landing. Alaric's like, the lords aren't gonna like this. No one's gonna like this. But she's like, but we're gonna do it anyways because it's the right thing to do.
Does anyone else? I know this is like misogynist, but does anyone else imagine that she like squeezes her boobies together and like plays with one of her nipples and says, "I think you."
I pictured more of a sweet smile, but for once, I'm the more innocent one between the two of us.
Can persuade them, Lord Alaric.
She's charming.
She's charming.
I dropped my handkerchief on the floor, and now I have to pick it up, and my dress is gonna blow over my fufu and my bottom.
Bend and snap.
Yeah. Oh, but I think you can persuade them, Lord Alaric. Oh gosh,
Lady Gwyn is having regrets.
my top just blew off, and my boobies are on show, Lord Alaric. No?
Oh my god.
Yeah, I can see Lady Gwyn's face. She's like,
boy.
I am a professional.
I hid my face.
This is not what I talk about.
It reminds me, obviously, that was like a league of their own. What would happen if I slid in the third and my dress were to pop open? My bosoms fall out.
Exactly. So she was very persuasive. And he's like, yeah, I can do it.
Yes.
That's fine.
Well, what about this? All right, if we're going there. And so it came to pass that the size of the gift was doubled with a stroke.
Doubled by a stroke.
With a stroke.
Of what? A stroke of
What are we
Lady
stroking? Come on.
Gwyn? What are we stroking, Lady Gwyn? Come on. Tell us now. You're the expert.
Doubled.
Yeah.
That stroke doubled it. I mean,
yes.
that's a powerful stroke.
Yeah, exactly.
Stroke.
And then we get a jump, and I don't know, I find it funny. We get these occasional jumps that George is like, oh, I can't be asked to write about this anymore, and he just says things like, little more need be said about this shit. He just says that.
I'm gonna share a little, like a little. Well, you're a writer too, so you know when we're writing, when we write about A Song of Ice and Fire for Radio Westeros, when we get to a point where we don't have much more to say, it's often hand wave. That's beyond our scope, or we don't have to talk about that. We've already done that.
Exactly.
That's just George
I feel
being
like George just gets like to a point. He's like, I can't be bothered to come up with anything else.
I'm sick of this.
So let's just end this now.
He just wants to jump now, and as do I.
Okay, fine, fair enough.
To Alysanne's big moment.
But he does say it. We've had it at least 3 times in this one chapter. Like, he's like, little more may need be said about Rhaena's life.
I really
died.
feel like we should like count how many times it comes up in the book.
But he's like, that's how he killed Rhaena. He's like, yeah, a little more need be said about that.
Little more.
She's dead.
I know. I was pretty mad about
like,
it.
that's how he murders her.
I was pretty mad about it. A little more needs to be said about it.
Yeah.
Fuck. Anyway. But that's Maesterly Guff as well in Rhaena's case.
It's Maesterly Guff, but it's also George just like, I don't know what else to say about this, so I'm just going to move on.
They got home and then this happened.
They went to a few places. They went to Torrance Square. They went to Barrington. I like Barrington. I like the Dustins. The Barrow of the First King. They showed them the Barrow of the First King. I've actually been to a place in southwest England called Devizes, which is spelt Devises with a Z. And it is really interesting, and they've got lots of barrows there. And so I think of the Dustin land as very similar to this. It's really interesting. This is where they bury people. It's a very sacred place. I really like the Dustins and the barrows. I find it fascinating that this was
I did feel like there was some like not being very nice to like the Northerners too. It was like, oh, they threw a tourney, but it was
I know, like that bit. Oh, it's nothing like
That's
that.
what I meant by Maesterly Guff.
I think I wrote shut up in my book.
Yeah.
Like, oh, just shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop talking about that.
Yeah.
Because it's rude. It's like, oh, okay, fine.
They got back to King's Landing. And they got the council together quite quickly. They got Hot Priest and they got Miss Doubtfire Bennifer together.
Because Alysanne had something she wanted to talk about. She's like, I got a thing.
She did.
She put something on the agenda. She's like, there's going to be any other business. There's one item on this agenda. And the agenda is what happened. If you remember, when she insisted on seeing some women at the wall, she went to Molestown. And it was there in Molestown that she learned something, as we said, would change the Seven Kingdoms forever. She says there was a girl there. What were we going to say?
No, I'm sorry. I said that out loud and I shouldn't have, because I was just thinking about all of the different words that George comes up with to describe these women. Well,
tell me what you were going to say.
Harlots, whores, strumpets, and now fallen women.
Yes,
fallen women.
Yeah, all the language. You're absolutely
very
right.
good at
languages.
this.
Totally. Strumpets, whores, fallen
Strumpets,
women.
my new favorite word. It's going to be. I'm changing my name from B word to strumpet.
Just slather me in butter.
Yoke boy calls me strumpet. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to start rumors.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, Alysanne's talking about a particular girl there. And this struck me when I was reading it. She says, no older than I am. And then I was like, well, how old are you? So I was checking it out. Alysanne at this point is only 22. Which shocks me, because I'm like, God, like at 22, was I anywhere near as diplomatic, wise and interesting? Probably not. Like, no, definitely not. 100% not. I was not learned in any way.
And a mother of 2 or 3.
Yeah, got at least 3 children by this point.
Yep.
22,
3,
mother of 3, very well read, very confident in herself, and just wow. Okay, 22. So she's no older than I am as I sit before you now. A pretty girl, but not, I think, as pretty as she was. Her father was a blacksmith, and when she was a maid of 14 years, he gave her hand in marriage to his apprentice. She was fond of the boy, and he of her, so the 2 of them were duly wed. But scarcely had they said their vows, than their lord came down upon their wedding, with his men-at-arms to claim his right to her first night. Not the, but her. He carried her off to his tower and enjoyed her, and the next morning his men returned her to her husband. And it's a really sad story, because basically it's like she talks about how she wasn't a virgin anymore, or how they put it in Westeros. Her maidenhead was gone, together with whatever love the apprentice boy had borne her. He wouldn't raise his hand against the Lord for peril of his life, so instead he raised it against his wife. And when it became plain she was carrying the Lord's child, he beat it out of her. From that day on, he never called her anything other but whore, until finally, that one of those words that Lady Gwyn's pointed out. So until finally the girl decided that if she must be called a whore, then she would live as one, and made her way to Molestown. There she dwells until this day, a sad child again, ruined, but all the while in other villages other maids are being wed and other lords are claiming their first night. And this is not the only person. She's heard this at White Harbour, Molestown, Barrington, and she says, I understood that this was a tradition, but I didn't realise that it happened quite so much, and that also and still to this day, and it even happens on Dragonstone with Targaryens.
I do like the little tidbit just in here, like intersecting in the story. Dragon seeds, they call them. Jaehaerys said with obvious reluctance, because maybe he's planted a few seeds himself that he doesn't want to admit to in front of his wife.
Yeah, it's nothing to boast of, he says, blushing. Shit, can't boast of this. Yeah.
Yes.
And he then says, so we have talked about whether Orys Baratheon, was he actually or was he not a bastard of the Targaryen house, but it says here, such children are cherished, though. Orys Baratheon himself was a dragon seed, a bastard brother to our grandsire, aka Aegon the Conqueror. Whether he was conceived of her first night, I cannot say, but Lord Arion was his father. That is well known. Gifts were given, ... And
She's
yeah,
like, fuck
gifts.
your gifts.
Yeah, fuck that. Like, no.
Yeah, more like gifts were taken.
Exactly.
And
So
you
you're like,
guys are all
oh, I
douchebags.
did impregnate you. I'm sorry. Here's some gifts, but I'm not going to stick around. Fuck. Sorry. Bye.
Yeah, and sorry, and not sorry, and you know.
But this is
anyway,
it's definite
yes.
it's definite
Anyway, it's bad.
confirmation that Oris Baratheon the House Baratheon is a bastard family of Targaryen. So that's, to me, that's confirmation of that, if we were in any doubt before, which we have been in.
It goes back and forth. So essentially it comes down to her demanding that this right be abolished. The laws be changed across Westeros. Jaehaerys is quite reluctant. He knows that if it is, that there's going to be pushback from the lords, and this is a really personal matter for him to stick his kingly nose into.
Wait,
especially
his kingly
for
nose or his kingly
nobody's.
penis?
Like,
Which one?
yep. His kingly bits into, especially when these are like bedroom stuff. Like it's very personal matters for him to make a law around. So it's touchy, and he doesn't want to do it.
I'm sorry, but it is very funny that it says the lords of the small council shifted awkwardly in their seats and exchanged glances.
Yeah, because
They've
all of them
done
have planted some seeds themselves.
She gives many good examples. She's like, well, what would you have done if I was a washerwoman and the king or a lord had come to take me for our first night? And he's like, well, I would have killed him.
Yeah.
You know, she talks about, we've talked about before about Gargon the Guest, who was a person who did this a lot. He was in charge of Harrenhal, and he did this a lot. He turned up a lot.
And then also she, like, I think it's interesting that Jaehaerys is like, no, it's a gift. Like, we're a dragon. If we do that, it's a gift. And she's like, these women are getting dogs, guys covered in lice, greasy people. Yeah. This is disgusting. It needs to stop.
And she also talks about the wives. She talks about the wives and says, so it's like an offence to the maid, but also her husband and also the wife. Well, like, what are they doing whilst their husbands are fucking other women? Are they sewing? Are they singing? Are they praying?
They don't care about that. None of these lords care about that. I don't care what my wife thinks. Come on, don't be silly, Alysanne.
Beth and
Come
Lady
on.
Gwyn. So what's the argument? What's Jaehaerys' argument for keeping it? Like, why is he saying no? We need to keep this. This is fine, because he does argue for quite some time
to keep the lords happy.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to stick anything in bedroom matters. That's it's personal.
He basically says the ones who are doing this are my more truculent subjects. So these lords are problematic already in other ways as well. And, you know, maybe we shouldn't tick them off because, you know, we're not that far from chaos, you know. The conquest is just a couple generations ago, and then you had obviously Maegor and all of that. So, I mean, I think I'm not trying to defend his position, but I mean, he's justifiably trying to maintain peace in a very large realm.
Yeah.
So that's where he's coming from.
He does say it's best to let a sleeping dragon lie.
I love her response.
We are the sleeping dragons. These lords who love their first nights are dogs. Why must they this is my favourite. Why must they slake their lust on maidens who have only just pledged their love to other men? Have they no wives of their own? Are there no whores in their domains? Have they lost the use of their hands?
I know, I love that part so much. We just talked about what a stroke can do.
Dublin and Dublin.
Yeah, it also shows just how, like, actual into it Alysanne is, that she even has, you know, gets the gist of masturbation. I think that's really great, too.
The thing is, they do get into it. So at one point, it is Albin Massey, who is this, you know, the twisted, hunchbacked lord. As she says, have they lost the use of their hands? And I imagine, in my head canon, he's like, he's like choking on the idea of a woman talking about masturbation. And he's like, there's more to it than just lust, your grace. And he does try to justify it, that it's an ancient practice, but it goes back further than the Andals, further than the faith. But then he talks about it's a first men thing. They're very savage. Their lords and kings were warriors, mighty men and heroes, and they wanted their sons to be the same. If a warlord chose to bestow his seed upon some maid on her wedding night, it was seen as a sort of blessing. And if a child should come of the coupling, so much the better. The husband could then claim the honour of raising a hero's son as his own. And this is the bit you talked about, Beth, when you mentioned that it's not heroes. It is, she says, it's old men, fat men, cruel men, poxy boys, rapers, droolers, men covered with scabs, with scars, with boils, lords who have not washed in half a year, men with greasy hair and lice. This sounds like a list of men on Tinder, Grindr. I mean,
I don't know about Grindr, Tinder.
I mean, what would you pick if you had to pick out of all of these?
Let's no.
Come on.
No. What was the fuck, marry, kill that we had to do like last week, and you were like, I can't even talk about sleeping with Sam because of the Night's Watch, no showers. Yes. So let's not do that. Let's not.
Oh, come on, Lady Gwyn, do you want to? What your top choice would be out of all of that list? Scabs, droolers.
Yeah. Well,
scars, boils.
I think I'd have to go with oh Lord, scars probably.
They don't weep.
Yeah, no scabs, no boils, no bath for half a year, greasy haired lice. No.
Yeah.
Oh God, I just shivered.
Yeah. I guess it would be scars.
No.
Yeah.
It would have to be scars, I think, for all of us, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's certainly not a blessing from
I would not feel
hero,
particularly blessed.
No.
Nope.
And then it's Grand Maester Bennifer, Mrs. Doubtfire, who's like, well, they didn't practice this in Andalos. And they're trying to place it on the First Men and make it like a First Man thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I mean by even just before, like how they sort of put down the North and the First Men. And they're not as othered as the Wildlings, but they're definitely not civilized like they are in the South. Anyway.
But it's Hot Priest. Hot Priest.
Either way, it's Hot Priest saves the day.
Bath.
This is the part I dislike, honestly, that it had to be... Okay, so I love that he steps in and speaks up and he agrees. But it's his voice that Jaehaerys actually listens to. He's like, okay, well, Barth is in, I'm beat. You know, he can't just concede and see that his wife is making a good point. It has to be, oh, Barth has spoken, and so I agree.
Yeah, that
pisses me off.
But he does speak up, and he's like, I think Her Grace is right. And the First Men might have found some purpose in this right, but the First Men fought with bronze swords and fed their weirwood trees with blood. And we are not those men. And it is past time we put an end to this evil. It stands against every ideal of chivalry. Our knights swear to protect the innocence of maidens. Save for when the lord they serve wishes to despoil one, it would seem. We swear our marriage vows before the father and the mother, promising fidelity until the stranger comes to part us. And nowhere in the seven-pointed star does it say those promises do not apply to lords. And he's like, some people won't like it, but fuck them. That's my summation of what Barth said. Some people won't like it, but fuck them.
Mm-hmm.
And the High Septon will be on board with this too. And he's right. He's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
which is important.
My reading is that he gave Jaehaerys a way out. You know, I think Jaehaerys wanted to agree with Alysanne. He's described as being uncomfortable and saying he doesn't think she's wrong, but he's got this dilemma because tradition and truculent lords and all that crap. And here's wise Septon Barth giving him, showing him the way out. Because god damn, if you can get the faith on board with you, then everything will be fine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Which is funny because if they're claiming that it's the people, the First Men who follow this, the faith isn't going to fucking matter.
Well,
they don't care what the faith
exactly. Everybody else will be on board, and that's, I guess, by
Yeah.
You know, the weight of that. Yeah, you don't think the Boltons gave a rat's ass about her
They
faith,
don't care.
No.
or the
They
king,
do not.
No.
or the Queen's laws,
Or
or any
anyone.
of this.
Or
It is
anyone.
really.
Any of it.
Yeah.
They're into what Boltons want.
Yeah.
Boltons want what Boltons want,
Exactly. Bolt
which
on.
is yeah.
Yep. And also, it sounds like they're actually enlist a quote crime of rape,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
vague.
so like
I mean-
they passed the law, and that so a bride's.
They did.
I don't like the way they've put it, but a bride's maidenhead belongs to her husband. I don't like it.
Yep.
Also gross.
Also gross.
But
Also
if
gross,
a
but
lord
alright.
or a peasant takes her maidenhead before any then or any other night, that's rape. So
Yep.
and will be punished as such.
And then they just go
Yeah.
on and have parties for the rest of the
Yeah, there's a
chapter.
party for the rest of the chapter. It's a small
Yep.
it's a small bit of the chapter, and
Yep.
it's a party. I do think it's a big thing. Could a lord, if a lord decided to take a maidenhead before a person's wedding night, because it talks about a wedding night or after, is that a loophole?
Any other night, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other night,
Okay.
but not her wedding night.
I think it's codified, you know, the crime. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the law was before this. It seems almost like this is where they first codified rape as a crime, but whether it was, you know, simply outside of that one sanctioned night of every woman's life where it was perfectly fine, you know, was it a crime on all those other nights prior to this? It's not really clear. Was it just
Only
something
if they were
socially,
highborn, probably.
you know, looked down upon? You know, it's not really clear whether that was in actual law. So
No, no, it's not at all.
Yeah, I think the only other example we have of laws before this that pertain to like women's rights is way back with Rhaenys and the man who beat his wife.
well, Alysanne had the one with the widow.
Yes,
before her.
before
Yeah,
this
so
reign is what I
the
meant, but yeah,
The widow's law.
the widow's law was
Yeah, that was
Alysanne's,
her first law. Yeah,
And that was good.
to help widows keep their rights.
Yes.
And I guess it's stuff like this that makes me. I know that Alysanne may be, as George writes, a flawed character, but this is something she's done that is so fantastic and brilliant for the realm.
Yeah. This is like Alysanne's like peak. Like, if anyone is like like me who's like, oh god, I don't like Alyanne, it's like, okay, just remind me of this chapter because I do love this part.
Well,
this
and
stuff
I'm
about
gonna,
her.
because I am an Alysanne fan, I'm gonna remind you and anyone else who thinks that, I'm just gonna ask you to please remember that we are reading the Maester's rendition of Alysanne. This is not actually truly Alysanne Targaryen as she really and truly was. We do not have her point of view. It's not like being inside Catelyn's head or Arya's head or Cersei's head. God help us.
But you're right, Beth, though. They did have a party.
They sure did.
They did.
They did. They decided to... It was the 10th anniversary of the King Jaehaerys' coronation. And he was replaced. He was not a little callow boy. He was a man of 24 who was every inch a king. He had a lovely, handsome, golden beard now.
Maesterly
Wiffle waffle, blah, 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 blah. He was tall. I actually wonder, I've written in there, I think the Maester may be into Jaehaerys a bit, because his language is like, he's like got a handsome beard, his unshorn hair, he wore with a thick braid that fell almost to his waist. Tall and handsome, Jaehaerys moved with an easy grace, be it on the dance floor or in the chaining yard. His smile, it was said, could warm the heart of any maiden in the Seven Kingdoms.
Or Maester.
His frown, or Maester like
Or
me.
Maester.
And his frown could make blah, blah, blah.
Yes,
Honestly, I'm
really.
just like, oh my god, are you in love with him? Like, what?
Okay.
What is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's just a reminder that there's some incest. There we go, some incest. In his sister, he had a queen. That was
Perfectly normal. Come on.
Yeah.
Perfectly normal.
Yeah, totally fine.
normal. It's fine.
So yeah, so it's kind of like a summary of what they've been through. They've had some pretty difficult times. So they decided to celebrate and have a tourney in King's Landing. And as we always know in A Song of Ice and Fire, if there's a tourney, it's a pretty terrifying thing. Something terrible might happen. But Princess Daenerys, Prince Aemon, Balon sat there and watched too, and they revelled in the cheers. Absolutely loved all of it. I don't believe that. I think if I watched a tourney, I'd be sick quite a few times, to be honest. And they had, apparently, Sir Ryan Redwine was like just an absolute badass. The Red Wine House is from the Reach. They are very, 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 very much in the south. But he unhorsed a Baratheon, an Oakhart, a Dondarrion, and a Hog known as Harry the Ham.
Interesting that the Baratheons are there, though. Like, that's an important little note. Because obviously we know that they don't really get along very well with Jaehaerys and Alysanne. They're not buddies.
We have a sudden reoccurrence of our least favourite Baratheon of Lord Rhaegar, who turns up too. With his two children, Boromund and Jocelyn. Jocelyn being the one that was born as his wife Alyssa died. We haven't seen him since then. Not since Rhaena threatened to kill him if he ever got a wife ever again and got her pregnant ever again.
Yeah, and speaking of Rhaena, we also have Rhaella.
Yep.
Turn up.
I will point out very quickly,
sorry
if you don't mind, that the Ryan Redwine crowned Queen Alysanne as his Queen of Love and Beauty.
Yes.
But yes, you're absolutely right. We've got mentions of Lannisters, Velaryons, Tullys, Arryns, Rowans, Oakharts, Manderleys. There's lots of names. There's also Alara.
It's very much the realm is coming back together.
Yes,
they're healing
absolutely.
after the faith and exceptionalism.
Yeah, and whatever Maegor got up to. We also have Alara, who was Alaric's daughter. She's become a lady-in-waiting to Alysanne. But then, you're right. What were you going to say about Rhaella?
Rhaella, Rhaena's other only living child now, Sook pops up, and Alysanne gives her a big hug because she's this, of course, the twin, the spitting image of her sister.
The grown older, which is sad because Rhaella...
She was her sister because they did
the swap,
so.
She probably is a Rhea.
Anyway.
But,
She is a Rhea.
Confusing.
Yeah, you look like a Rhea and you are a Rhea, and also you're not the Rhea, and
The chapter ends, though, in a very beautiful and interesting place. Foreboding
way. Yeah.
It was a time for warm embraces, for smiles, for toasts and reconciliations, for renewing old friendships and making new ones, for laughter and kisses. It was a good time, a golden autumn, a time of peace and plenty, but winter was coming. And that is the final sentence in that chapter.
Dun dun
But
dun.
winter was coming. Oh my god. So fucking badass. And that is the end of that chapter. We finally reached the end of Jaehaerys and Alysanne, their triumphs and tragedies. It's taken us most of the year, but we've made it to the end. And it was a good one. It was a doozy. We've had.
It was a good one.
My God, we've had Rhaea disappearing on Balerion, coming back with worms inside her body. We've had faceless men making threats, and we've had dragons refusing to go north of the wall. That is an amazing chapter. Let's be honest.
It was a
big chapter.
It was a big chapter. Yep.
And that's why we took it so blooming slowly, because it's just too much. If you want a deep dive,
we did. And this one already. I mean, we're like millions of hours
in.
Into tonight. Yes.
Well, this morning to me.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's I love this chapter. This is a chapter of you know, it's a good one. Lots of shocks, surprises.
It is a good one.
Sadness.
And there's still so much to talk about with it.
We're not even halfway through the book yet, guys. So
I know.
Still so much to go. But that is where we will leave the chapter. And so it is where we will leave you. If you do not wish to have any spoilers for what is to come in
Even though we've already done millions of spoilers tonight. So you may as well just stick around.
Nothing major that would really spoil it for you. I've been very careful to listen carefully. I have been careful. And if there's anything ridiculous, I'll cut it out, move it to the spoiler section. But honestly, I think we've been very careful to not spoil too much for the story. And if you don't want the real details, the real doohickey doodah spoilers, then this is where we will sign off and say goodbye to you, and you can join us next time for the new chapter, you guys. The last words we had was, but winter was coming, so I can't guarantee that it's a jolly one, but we're moving on to the long reign. Jaehaerys and Alysanne, policy, progeny, and pain. Policy, progeny doesn't sound that exciting, and then and pain is like, oh crap. But yeah, winter was coming.
Well, winter is coming. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
If you're really into policy or progeny, or pain, join us at the next episode.
Perhaps they might all be
jumbled
up together.
Could be jumbled up together. Policy and pain, progeny and policy.
Progeny and pain.
Policy is
pain.
Yeah.
Policy
does sound like
pain.
A significant, significantly dramatic,
especially
combination.
Especially if you're a woman in Westeros. Progeny is pain. But anyway, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Kiss by Fire. So, the spoilers. Now we can talk about whatever the fuck we want to talk about, because you're free, Lady Gwyn. Release yourself. Say whatever you want to say. We're all free to say whatever we want now. So we're in the spoilers.
I'm looking at... I might have actually hit most of this because... because we went very hard into sort of spoilers.
I know we were bad. I have
I
have a few based on Silver Wing. The wall.
Well, let's start at the beginning.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go.
No, I was going to say we can start at the beginning, and we can start with. We start in Winterfell, and I think we alluded to Alaric. For me,
Stannis.
Stannis.
Interesting, because I was going to say there's a comparison with Ned.
Yeah, there is.
There is, but he's Stannis, and I think that's why it's so fun, is because Ned is so much like Stannis, but Robert can't stand Stannis, but he's best friends with Ned, and they're so alike. It's amazing.
Yeah,
he even says the viewer, right? He's Stannis.
The viewer.
Yeah, and he's the second son.
Yeah, the second son, but Ned is the second son.
Second son
but also
syndrome.
Ned was meant to not be the heir to Winterfell, like Alaric.
Yeah. I was wondering about...
And Alaric, similarly.
About that, when his brother actually died. I mean, obviously didn't have... he hadn't any children yet to leave behind.
Yeah.
But I wondered, did he die? Was Alaric trying to have his life with his Mormont woman, and then all of a sudden, he's stuck inheriting Winterfell and just not
thrust into lordship.
What he planned and not what his wife planned, and
not at all.
We don't really know what point that happened.
No,
we do know that Ned sits and thinks, well, this was meant to be Brandon's life. Brandon would know what to do, and I wonder if Alaric has that same kind of feeling.
And why he just kind of drags the king down to the crypts immediately.
I know. I was going to say Lady Gwyn had I didn't even think about that. As soon as Jaehaerys shows up, Alaric drags him right down to the crypts, just like Ned does, or Robert
King,
and Ned
let's
do.
go to the
I
crypts.
didn't even put that together.
Yeah. There are a lot of ways
Kings
to
and crypts.
the comparison between the way that Ned greets Robert when he arrives. We also have I've mentioned in my spoilers a little bit later on. There's a lot of talk about the journey to and from Winterfell, going north and south, how hard it is, which is something we learn about from Robert and Cersei, the wheelhouse, how long it has taken to get them up there, how long it takes them to go south again. And it makes me think, how long is it going to take for our characters to get back to like we want our Starks to get back to Winterfell, and Westeros is not an easy continent to cross, especially in the north.
It's a traverse.
And we have. Sorry, go ahead, Lady Gwyn.
No, I'm sorry. I'm such an
sorry.
off-topic person. I found the answer. Late breaking news is that Walton Stark died 7 years ago.
Yeah,
from where we are.
Yeah.
So that means that that Alaric's children were fairly grown, because he's his daughter might be younger, but his sons are old enough to be going eventually, for this tourney, going to Winterfell by themselves. And so
for sure,
actually two sons and a daughter sounds very Ned, Brandon, and Lyanna going to the tourney at Harrenhal ish.
Totally.
Yeah.
I do. I think they genuinely I think George has made a lot of comparisons here, and you have the way that King Robert is welcomed at Winterfell in A Game of Thrones, compared to how Alaric greets Alysanne.
Yeah, there's a
big
contrast.
Ned has the whole big contrast.
I feel like that one's like apples and oranges though, because like Ned and Robert are friends.
But it's the king.
But it's very much the king. They
won the war together.
They kneel to the queen.
Yeah, the Winterfell is yours, and they you should be. If you look, if you're gonna greet the king or queen, you send people to greet them. You have a greeting party. If I think about British history, British culture, if you were greeting somebody, a high up person in your class, you would have your entire household out to greet them. Mm-hmm. And it would be considered extremely rude not to have that. You would have all of your family, your sisters, daughters, mothers, brothers, sons, all of that, and they'd be in order. They'd be in order, and you would also have your entire household staff.
Yeah, servants also in order. You'd have
all your servants in order. Top of the household, you've got the butler, you've got your housekeeper, and then going on. If you're a fan of Downton Abbey, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. These people will be standing in the right order, in the right place, to greet a person of importance. And if it's the king and queen, or king and or queen, you damn well have the people out there waiting for them, whether you like them or not, whether winter is coming or not. You have the people. So it's to me, it's a very big statement to be. It's just going to be you and my couple of sons. Yeah. That's it. There's no one else.
That's exactly how it's shown in the first. Obviously in the book in A Game of Thrones, but in the show, I just watched that episode about a week ago. It is exactly how it's portrayed. You see all the people, the family, the staff, all lined up in the proper way, and it's interesting.
It's interesting,
but it's interesting because like I don't remember now, because like they go to White Harbor and stuff, and we just read it too, but I don't remember if they have.
They had it all. They had it all. And that,
did they have everyone lined up like that? And I know for sure, like Alaric is meant to be this, like I said, like this massive contrast to treating them differently than they've ever been treated. He's not blowing smoke up their ass. He's not trying to please them or perform for them. He is who he is, and that's it. But again, like I don't know that he would see it as an insult, or if he's just like, this is just the way it is here. Do you know what I mean? He's just not a fluffy person.
The interesting thing is, a lot of people, especially like you get Peter Baelish's thing about all Starks and Northerners are cold and dull and humorless, and they can't take jokes and stuff, and Ned Stark can't take a joke, and he's all about honour. And I can see a lot of Ned in Alaric, actually. Like the sensibleness that you have to have. Like you can do all of the fancy stuff, but to be a warden of the North, you have to be a sensible person who is taking care of the fact that winter is coming, and that you have to be pragmatic. So I do wonder if Catelyn, who is a southerner, if her influence was seen more greatly, if she was not a southerner, if she wasn't around, would
yeah, like Lady Gwyn said, there was no woman to be like,
Ned,
hey.
Would Ned have greeted Robert with the same fanfare? Like, he would have known the right thing. I think he would have done more than Alaric does. I think he would have known the right things to do.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I don't think he would have had quite as much. I think he would have been like, well, like, we can greet the king as we should greet the king, but I'm not going to put on this message. Like, I need to. If my farmers are here,
because he literally helped Robert.
But
win
if my
that
farmers
throne,
are here instead of on the land bringing in the harvest, then they're not going to be bringing in the harvest, and people are going to starve. You know, like, that's life in the north is just different. So I do wonder if that was that's kind of what you're thinking about as Lord of Winterfell, especially if you're aware that autumn is on the way, which I think they like. There's talk of summer snows, which is what happens at the end of summer. They must be like, okay, the summer snows are coming. We're heading towards autumn, which means we're heading towards winter, which means winter is coming, which means we need to be thinking really carefully about, like, provisions and food and stuff. And I'm less interested in what a bloody king, and actually not even a king, a queen. Not even a king.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's a queen.
Yeah.
It's not even a king. Anything else on Alaric, Winterfell?
I've got nothing on Winterfell. I do find I enjoy the wee mention of stopping off in other places, because we get that in A Storm of Swords with Bran. She goes to a place that eventually becomes called Queen's Crown, which becomes very important in A Storm of Swords.
I like
that
that
nice.
too.
It's like a little like boop. There you go, little bit there to remember that by.
Yeah, it was like visiting Alysanne in the main series.
But then the main part is Silverwing and the Wall.
Yeah,
and everything we feel about that.
I guess I keep thinking about Mel at the Wall, who is like, she's not obviously fire like a dragon, but she is sort of like fire personified, and she is stronger at the Wall.
She is, yeah. Which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and but also like the reverse of the Silverwing thing, so she's stronger at the Wall, but she can't get into Storm's End. Like, she can get into Storm's End, but she can't birth the Shadow Baby in Storm's End.
But dragons can land in
a little
Storm's
bit
End.
Earlier.
But a Shadow Baby
Yes,
can't.
they can, but she can't birth the Shadow Baby. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And again, like I said earlier, like, you know, you have Jon Snow who can't sense ghost beyond the Wall. Is it possible that Silverwing and Alysanne would lose the sort of bond that they have between the Wall, like if they flew over? But Jon can feel ghosts on the other side.
Can he?
So that would have been...
I don't know if he can.
Yeah, like once they're on the same side together, they can. They just can't feel each other.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
when
no.
separated.
When Ghost is on the wrong, when
like
Ghost
Bran
is on
and
the
Summer.
other side of the wall, Jon can't feel him. Jon can't sense him at all.
No, not when Jon's on the south and Ghost is on the north, but when they're on the same
yeah.
side, they can feel each other. Yeah, and Bran and Summer are one beyond the Wall. So, what do you think, Lady Gwyn?
I think that I can't remember the context that we were talking about. Just being able to feel beyond the Wall. I'm not sure. I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know that the Wall is at once a magical barrier and also this sort of like magical amplifier, like Steph just said. So
yeah, that's what's
yeah. So I don't know that I actually have ever bought that that's gospel truth. I'm trying to think of, you know, an example of perhaps. I think that there is an example, and I'm trying to bring it to mind, where actually he does sense ghosts beyond the Wall.
I don't think he does. I think he can't sense them until he returns. When Jon goes to the other side, after Stannis has made the offer of Winterfell, and he's thinking, I might accept it, but then Ghost returns to him north of the Wall, and he's like, no, you are of the old gods, you look like the old gods, and that's my place, is with you.
Yeah, and I can't do it. But I think if I'm remembering correctly, and I definitely could be mistaken, there's, yeah, like when one is on the south side and one's on the north side, they can't feel each other.
No, they can't. No.
And even Bran, he thinks about, I think it's interesting because we know that Rickon's in like Skagos, but Bran can feel some of the other siblings when he's beyond. But not all of them. Like he sort of talks about Nymeria like she's just off over there, but then he talks about, I think he can sense when Jon's beyond the wall, but he doesn't realize it. It's like readers can sort of pick up on it, but Bran doesn't know it in story.
He's aware, Summer is aware of all of his, he's aware of Shaggy Dog. He's aware of...
Yes.
Definitely Nymeria and Ghost, and he thinks about not Lady. No, he thinks about Grey Wind.
Oh, Grey Wind.
Who he can no longer sense.
Yeah.
No.
But
yes,
that's because he no longer is there.
Although, Lady Gwyn, don't you have a theory that Grey Wind is still alive?
I mean, I wrote such a theory. That's funny because
I love it.
It's an exercise in theory crafting. In that, I wanted to show I was being kind of an asshole, to be honest. I wanted to show that you could make a theory about anything, and you can. I mean, I took actual words from, it's completely grounded in text, which all of our theories or analysis are. Do I really believe it? No, I think the bigger part of that theory is that Rhaenyra Westerling is still alive. That's the real meat of that, I think, in my opinion.
The meat that a direwolf hasn't eaten.
Yeah. But anyways, I mean, it's funny because the language in that exact Bran thing is a lot of what led to that, to that theory, that essay.
Yeah.
So lots of discussions with people about the things that Summer was sensing and numbers. Is 5 plus 1? Is it 5 and 1, or is it 5 plus 1?
Ambiguity.
Verbal ambiguity on the part of the author. What a surprise! So,
in A Song of Ice and Fire, no, never,
absolutely not. What do we think the implications for what is mentioned about Silverwing not being able to go north of the wall? What do we feel about those implications for the story as it continues? Like, how do we... Why has George included this? He didn't need to. Mm-hmm. He has, though. So why is it there?
Well, imagine someday there's going to be a dragon at the wall again.
Yeah.
Do you know what's funny? Because I always often feel like it won't necessarily be relevant. Like, you know, sometimes, so like what did he do? Like just recently with his blog post, and he was like, dragons aren't nomads. So like, this is just bullshit. Kind of like, he didn't say that exactly, but it was like, this stuff is show stuff, but it's not going to happen. And I just kind of wonder sometimes if it's like coming down the pipes where the show might want to go. And I know that obviously this was, I think, before the show came out with season 7 and all that nonsense, but it's just sometimes I'm like, maybe he just did it to be like, nope, that's never what was going to happen. Like, I always picture anything that happens in the north with dragons happening at Winterfell. I never really picture it being beyond the wall. I think of it because of Winterfell being like the place where winter fell, right? Where winter will fall, fell the first time, whatever. So, I mean, it's probably just me being like, no, but...
No, I think there's a lot of talk about that long before the show showed that final battle happening at Winterfell. I think that was something that people were always convinced was going to happen. And those two guys probably took that as... I don't know that actually, like this is right. Like, that makes sense. There? You know, they used to participate in the fan forums, so they probably got most of their best ideas.
It's more like,
to be honest.
Yes, probably. It's more like Dany and taking the dragons beyond the wall, and then that's the ice dragon crap that happened. That I'm like, I just kind of wonder if it's like, nope, a dragon can't go beyond the wall, so that can't happen. It would be nice. Yeah. What do you think, Steph? Do you have
Oh my
a
God.
little theory about it at all?
I don't know if I've
Tinfoil
got a
hat.
theory, but I'm just fascinated by what implications it has. It may not necessarily be that a dragon goes to the wall, but it's telling us about the wall magic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's giving us information about the wall. Something is up about it, or something not necessarily about the magic itself, but the dragon didn't want to go north. Something, it just, whatever it is not good. We don't like that. This gets your Scooby senses. Your Spidey Scooby.
But also, if like the ultimate enemy is beyond the wall,
exactly. So
you know.
So it may not be that the dragon knows anything particularly interesting or senses. It may not be magic. It may just be like they're just going, nah. I'm a magical being. I can sense ice magical beings.
Ice.
And I'm a fire magical being.
Ice magic.
And I'm not fucking interested in that.
One and the
And I'm
other
not
do
going
not
north
go
of that.
together.
Yeah.
No.
And
so it could be a lot of things. But yeah, sorry, what were you going to say, Lady
I was
Gwyn?
going to say that, this is just more, well, like you were saying, it's kind of more George just highlighting the magic in the wall. And, it sounds stupid, but it's that it's ice magic, which, he talks about quite a bit in the World Book as well. But really, in A Song of Ice and Fire, magic is, the series proper, magic is kind of sidelined most of the time because it's not part of the character's day-to-day experience. So you don't get a lot of explication of magic or even commentary on it.
He doesn't like to explain it or...
No. But you do
or
get
anything like that.
Melisandre rolling up to the wall in A Dance with Dragons and telling Jon Snow, I have dreamed of your wall, Jon Snow. Great was the lore that raised it, and great the spells locked beneath its ice. We walk beneath one of the hinges of the world. It's a powerful magical object.
And in her chapter too, she thinks about the fact that she's stronger here.
It's powerfully magic, but
Yeah.
I don't think that it's necessarily like a great force field. If
What
it
do
was
you
a great
feel
force
about her
field,
language?
the others wouldn't be able to get through it.
No,
I mean, I guess,
exactly.
and I guess that's the idea, but you wouldn't.
Yeah, but they maybe can't get through it turned, right? Like they have to.
Don't forget that Sam has the Horn of Joramun, that we think is the Horn of Joramun, that might bring the wall down. What do you think is the deeper meaning of her saying the hinge, one of the hinges of the world? To me, that's such a weird image in my head.
I just think it's one of the key magical.
I'm curious what she thinks the other ones are.
I mean, I guess it's, when I think of that, it just sort of evokes, magical, sort of like nodes or something, kind of like ley lines, but spots instead of ways. I don't know.
But a hinge is also part of a door.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's a gate, a door, or a gate. There's gates at the wall.
The place at which something turns, or the night, the long night ended and the new era began. That could also be called the hinge in history.
And of course, we have the Nightfort as well. Whether we think that the Nightfort is gonna be coming up in Winter because it's where Queen Selyse and Stannis are supposed to make their seat. Are they going to be the new Knights King and Queen? There's belief, not just general belief, but I think George has said that Shireen will be sacrificed. There was a lot of potential human sacrifice at the Nightfort. Is that where Shireen might be sacrificed at the Nightfort?
It could be. Very much could be.
Could be. I don't have a lot to say on the Nightfort because I want to save that stuff for when we actually get to the main series.
Maybe, but it is it's there. She's talked about the Nightfort and said that
Alysanne didn't like it, but it doesn't go into a ton more.
But
than
I
that.
do wonder if it's going to be the seat of the new Knights King and Queen, aka. But I do wonder if I don't think Stannis is going to burn Shireen. I think Selyse. I think
think
Mel
Mel will.
and
No.
Selyse will,
No.
but Stannis is not there, so I don't think he's going to.
It's going to be Stannis. Have I got an essay for you, lady?
Yes.
I know, it's so funny. I did that Nightfort panel, and like Lord Travis
Actually,
said that too. I remember he
Just
covered,
a couple
like,
days ago,
that
released
stuff,
this
but
essay
I
about Stannis.
Yeah.
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 10-year
yeah.
anniversary of our Stannis episode. Stannis
He-
is the Agamemnon of A Song of Ice and Fire. Agamemnon
That's what I was just
burned
gonna
his
say.
daughter for fair
she
winds,
is the
so
Iphigenia.
I don't
Yeah.
think there's any doubt that it's going to
Yes.
be Stannis. And also,
So you do. Okay.
I mean, I urge you
convinced
to,
me. Fine.
not just because I want you to read my essay, but like read it because there's a lot of prefiguring that goes on, mostly in the stuff all around.
I know, but you had me at Greek mythology.
Yeah.
So I believe in you because it's Greek mythology.
We talked about this a few. Maybe it was last year, Steph. I brought up the same.
But
The
it
same
totally
thing.
makes me think that
Shireen's like the Iphigenia.
yeah, you have definitely. And if Stannis, what makes me think of it is because the Nightfort was the seat of the Night's King and Queen, and Stannis wants to make and Selyse, they want to make the Nightfort their seat, and that's
Let us make it our
he's
seat.
a king. Let us
That
make
was
it our
by
seat.
Selyse.
They are a king and a queen.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I should have looked this up, but I believe in Daenerys' vision in the House of the Undying, doesn't she see a vision of Stannis with blue eyes or something? And
That's like wasn't that the person?
I
on
can't
the
remember,
ship?
and I might be wrong about that. But even so, just even without that, Stannis wants to make his seat at the Nightfort. He is a king. Selyse is his queen. They are they deal in magics, and I can't.
I think there's no question that there's going to be some
cannot-
big shit
but
that happens.
I
at the
just
Nightfort
can't
with Stannis.
escape the fact that they want to make that place their seat. He's basically given up Storm's End and Dragonstone. He's like, I've left it. These are my new places. Like, he's left some people there, but they've now been taken by Cersei and whatever.
But it doesn't have at this point anyway. I don't know how much I have to give to this, but like Stannis doesn't have vows to the Night's Watch or whatever. So like him claiming a castle on the wall is kind of insane because
but
it's not really his to claim, but it's not
I just
man,
feel
so
like
whatever.
symbolically,
But,
if there's a king claiming a seat at the wall at the Nightfort, where somebody else also claimed that they were a king at the Nightfort on the wall, and somebody who also deals in, fiery, dark magic, I feel like the symbolism is just absolutely there for me. And the fact that we know, like, Shireen, I think Shireen's going to burn, and we know that George has said that this is going to happen, and that's another child sacrifice, which is what was going on with the Night's King and Queen, was they would have their children and they would be sacrificed probably at the Black Gate. They were sacrificed to the others. Perhaps
I wonder if Stannis would even know that the Black Gate existed.
he can't get through it. But I think it's like that the Night's King and Queen were originally ice magic. They are a fire magic on the other side of the wall. So I don't know if it'll be exactly the same, but it's symbolically important, and it is a person arriving at who wants to make their seat the Nightfort, which was the seat of the Night's King.
So instead of sacrificing their child to the cold gods, they're sacrificing their child to the fiery gods.
Exactly.
Will that like break the hinge?
Who knows?
Is that what breaks the wall? Will the wall fall? I think you guys don't think it will, right, Lady Gwyn? Was that... Or is it like, what's the...
I don't...
Oh my god.
I
Chekhov's
don't-
wall? Like it has to fall?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen the way a lot of people think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you think it will happen?
I don't think Euron Greyjoy has a damn thing to do with it. So.
Oh God, no.
No, God, I don't think so either. No.
Oh,
No.
let me just put
He's
that
a
out there.
distraction.
Nope.
But yeah.
No.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right.
I just wanted to mention Deep Lake because it's now manned. We talked about Deep Lake with It's the new one that was built, and it's got a statue of Alysanne outside it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually now, by the end of A Dance with Dragons, it's manned by wildlings, led by somebody whose name I've forgotten. Halleck.
Brother of Harmadog's Head.
Exactly, brother of Armadog said, and that it's been manned by wildlings.
That's actually the other thing I wanted to talk about. You just reminded me, Lady Gwyn. You talked about the ears being cut off.
Yeah.
Burley talked about the ears being cut off, and of course you can't help but think of the Moon clans and Mountains of the Moon clans, and the wildlings, or they're pretty much wildlings, cutting off the ears of but in the Vale, cutting off the ears of their enemies. So I kind of wonder if some of those like Night's Watch guys got through, or not Night's Watch, but wildling guys got through and made it down to the Vale and like founded some of the mountain clans.
I do find the mountain clans really interesting, that they are wildlings as well, but they live within Westeros.
I think it's like this. In England, you had the original Britons. They were the original inhabitants of the island, and then come the Romans, and then come the Angles and Saxons, and so the Britons get pushed to the edges. And of course you have the Scots, which are like the free folk beyond the wall. But you also have the Welsh. You also have the Welsh, who are from the same basic origins, the original Britons, and they're pushed just into the mountains at the, in the middle of the country, but the mountains in the periphery. Which is very much like the clans, the mountain clans in the Vale.
Definitely.
So that's my take. Free folk are Scots, and the mountain clans are the Welsh.
I like that too, actually. That's great. Yeah. And the Vale is very similar to Wales in my head.
Yeah.
Because it's very green and fecund and full of sheep.
The Giant's Lands must be...
Yeah.
I'm going to call it Snowdon. I can't say the
right
name of it now. I'm sorry. Sorry, Welsh.
No, it is Snowdon. Sorry, I can't remember the Welsh name.
Sorry,
but it's.
We have
and there's a lot of
patron
dragony.
Who probably could say it.
There's a lot. There's a lot of
yeah. Go get him.
Welsh history that is very close to Westerosi history, to do with dragons, to do with dwarves, to do with kings burying dwarves in places. It's really interesting. If you look into Welsh history, there's a lot of stuff that I wonder if George borrowed or was inspired by.
Agreed.
Definitely. But I do like the idea that the wildlings are manning a castle with a statue of Alysanne right outside.
Yeah. Thank you for getting us back on track.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I occasionally do that. I occasionally get
that was all
right.
right.
Not often. I also really liked the very minor parallel between Jaehaerys was greeted by Alaric, who immediately talks about how it was a Targaryen king who kills his older brother, essentially. And that is a parallel between what Aerys does to Brandon. That's Ned again. He was the second son, and his older brother was killed in a slightly different way, but even so, as a result of the actions of a Targaryen king. And that's another comparison to Ned that I felt was there. I've mentioned about journeys to around Westeros. But also I like the other thing I wanted to mention was dragon seeds and how they pop up, and it's just there suddenly. Boom, dragon seeds.
I liked that, like, again, I said it sort of when we were talking about it, but, like, Jaehaerys was, like, reluctant to talk about it. And it's like, that's probably because you made some, because we meet them later. I mean, if you believe that the show is accurate to that.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. If we believe that, what's his name? Ulf is theirs.
Are any of the ones that...
Hugh Hammer.
Hugh the Hammer in the show is one of his daughter's children. Who does Ulf? Does
Yes.
Does Ulf the White say that he
Ulf is He says he's Jaehaerys.
Interesting.
Bastard.
And that's just the show, isn't it? It's not confirmed in the books.
He says Viserys and Daemon are
Yeah.
his brothers. Yeah.
No, so that means he's Balon's,
Mm-hmm.
not Jaehaerys' then. Yeah.
Oh,
Balon's.
okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Be very interesting to wonder if Jaehaerys had any of
Yeah,
himself.
because there wouldn't be any. Everyone would be too old, I think, if they were Jaehaerys' actual. Anyway, it's interesting.
It is interesting to wonder about the dragon seeds and the part that they're going to play. And I guess the last thing, but we do have this tourney, and we have the tourney where at the end, Alysanne is crowned the Queen of Love and Beauty, and that is, I think, is that the first time we see that honour mentioned? And the Commons roared their approval, which is compared in many minds to the tourney at Harrenhal in the Year of the False Spring, where that is when
Where the Commons
that is when the smiles died. And I know Rhaegar should probably crown his wife, but is there Sansa is crowned the Queen of Love and Beauty in a tourney? How much of a scandal was it genuinely that Rhaegar said Lyanna would be the Queen of Love and Beauty instead of Elia? I wonder about that bit being exaggerated, because it's Robert Baratheon's language. That's when the smiles died.
I mean, I don't know. I think that the crowned prince not naming his wife probably was bad news. Especially because there is obviously so much more that happened at that tourney that is not disclosed on the page. I don't know, but you do have to wonder if what's her name, for example, if Ashara Dane was crowned the Queen of Love and Beauty instead of Lyanna Stark, would
That's
it have
what I
been
wonder.
when all the
I don't
smiles
think
died?
the smiles all did die. I think that is, I don't know what that is. What were you going to say, Lady Gwyn? You were going to say something.
That I think that there are other mentions of Queen of Love and Beauty prior to this. Specifically, Simon Dondarrion crowned little Princess Daenerys the Queen of Love and Beauty.
Yes.
After the completion of the Dragon Pit. So he's Lord Blackhaven, presumably he has a husband. I mean, she's a little girl, but I think George is just showing the tradition would be maybe to honor the highest ranking or the daughter of the house or something. Or so at the tourney in the Mystery Night, you see it's the daughter.
Yeah.
No, sorry, not the Mystery Night. Back it up. Hedge Night.
I know who you mean, the Hedge Night. Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I've actually never fully comprehended why it's such a... I don't think that it's such a big controversy for Rhaegar to name Lyanna inherently, because he had a reason for it. But I think the problem is that other people didn't know the reason. So I don't think it would be terrible for him to not name his wife. I think the reason it is, obviously what people assumed he meant by this, which he didn't really mean anything by it. My opinion, he was trying to honor her for actually winning the prior day of the tourney.
Yeah.
And he knew it.
Yeah.
So he was giving her the laurels where he could. But, I think if Robert hadn't taken offense and Brandon, probably wouldn't have been a big deal. So I think it's more about the reaction of what that people had.
Robert and Brandon are two hotheads.
Yeah.
So
I don't think
I was
Ned
gonna say the pride
was like
no.
all worked up about it. And seems pretty obvious that, nobody else was either. So, well, it's mainly Robert and Ned. Shouldn't say nobody, but
It could also just be one of those things that's like retrospective. It's like that's when all the smiles died, because this is kind of like the moment that triggered the war in a lot of people's minds.
I feel like the language suggests to me that it's not literal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's I think you're right, Beth, that actually it's more suggestive of, because that's the point where the war, the seeds of the war began. rather than literally.
Yeah, the
I
rumbling
think people
started.
maybe were like, "Oh, that's interesting," but I don't think I don't think it was like a silence in the tourney because he named Lyanna. Maybe a bit of a one, but I feel like the language is exaggerated personally for me, that for dramatic purposes, to make us think, and that is, it sounds like singer's music. It's like that, like a singer who's telling you the story and giving you the verse, and that's the moment the smiles died. Yeah,
Right.
and it's it's musical, and you're meant to think of that, rather than just maybe Robert and Brandon were quite pissed off, but most other people didn't really think about it. But the song version, the one that history wants you to know, was that's the moment the smiles died. If you won a tourney, Beth and Lady Gwyn, both of you answer this question, please. Who would you name as your Queen of Love and Beauty out of the characters in A Song of Ice and Fire? They're staring into space right now like, what? How do I answer that question? I knew you would say that.
Obviously,
Rhaena.
I don't know how you could know that I was going to say Rhaena.
Who's Lady Gwyn? Who's your Queen of Love and Beauty? You've bested all the knights. Who's it going to be?
From A Song of Ice and Fire, or the entire
Anyone
canon?
from A Song of Ice and Fire? The entire canon. Who is your Queen of Love and Beauty? That you want to place the crown on her head or his head. It could be male queens, could be drag queen. Whose head would you like to place that laurel onto? Satin.
I didn't say. Who said that?
No, that was Beth. It was cheeky Beth. Cheeky Beth. He's like satin.
Yeah.
Jon Snow.
Is it Nimble Dick?
Jon Snow.
I think it's Val.
Yes. That's it.
Yeah,
That's
Nimble
it.
Dick.
Nimble
It's gotta
Dick
be
deserves
Nimble Dick,
it.
right.
Let's go with that.
He does. He deserves some shit.
He does.
Yeah.
Bless him.
Bless his heart.
No, seriously, I want to know who's your Queen of Love and Beauty.
No, I can't. Okay, you're not gonna let me get away with that. You don't know. I really don't know. Val?
It's a tough one, right?
Probably Val.
All of Westeros is at a tourney. Who do you crown?
Yeah.
Obviously, for Beth, it's Rhaena. It was just always going to be Rhaena. I knew it as soon as I asked the question. I was like,
Yeah. Also, like, if it had to be A Song of Ice and Fire, it would have been Val.
Yeah. That's
I
who
love
I
Val.
think.
I love Val.
I don't know. I'll go with Val.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Obviously. Steph, who's
I don't
yours?
fucking know. I ask the questions. I don't answer them. I pose them to people and shy away when it's my turn to answer them. I don't know. All the badass women in the whole bloody story. Probably Alaric's Mormont bloody wife, because she sounds like an amazing human being.
Yeah, she's good. I was just going to say, I know who yours is. Yours is Old Man.
Mine. Old Man is probably not my Queen of Love and Beauty.
Old Man
She
deserves
some props,
some
but
laurels
I'm not,
for sure.
I wouldn't, if I don't know what the I'm not kissing her toothless mouth.
No one says you kiss the Queen of Love and Beauty. You just give him a crown, girl.
Old Nan was pretty hot, at one point.
Yeah, that's true.
I know, exactly. She might have hooked up with Dunk. Oh, it's Rowan Weber, obviously.
Rowan Weber.
Oh, I take it back.
Are we just
It's gotta be
naming
her because
women that we find hot in A Song of Ice and Fire?
It's actually got to be her. 'Cause she's got,
I know that you like Rowan Weber.
yeah.
I recall. My couch is very squeaky. I just moved and it was like,
Okay.
"Nee,"
All
just
right,
so you
that's
know,
fine.
so that someone listening isn't like, what the?
I probably would have cut it out, but now you've talked about it, I'll keep it in.
Well, you can cut that
No,
whole
I'm gonna
bit
keep
out.
it in.
It's fine.
Keeping the squeakiness, squeaky squeaks.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
4 hours.
of squeaking.
Why not?
It's fine. That's all I've done this week.
All right.
That's it, though.
That's it.
I really loved that chapter. I loved that chapter. I love that section of the chapter. I love not coming to any conclusions, but wondering what on earth. Don't you guys? Like, what on earth? Like, why? Why is this happening? Why is Silverwing doing this?
Yeah, I feel like we should do a bonus episode on like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
little
all the stuffs
for Patreon.
Probably. I think we should.
Thank you so much for being in it for the long haul with us,
Gwyn.
Lady Gwen. I don't know if you knew how long we'd be gapping for, but sorry.
We love you.
No, really, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Giving us your thoughts on things. We genuinely really appreciate it. And we love you very much. And I hope you still like us, even though we've made you talk to us for such a long time.
I do. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
It was fun.
For you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was
Your
fun.
insights mean a lot to us because you just basically know so much. Essentially. Your knowledge is encyclopedic.
Yeah, but the
Wealth
older
of
I get, the
knowledge.
less I know. So it's a weird thing. It is.
That's not the way it works.
It is the way it
it's the
works.
opposite.
I've heard your podcast.
You'll
so
find
I
out
don't think
someday.
That's true.
It's literally the way it works.
Do you know how many times we've been recording and I'm like, shit, I need to listen to the Radio Westeros episode on this topic. And I'm like, oh God. And I have you right here now. I'm like, she's here. I can ask her any of the questions I want to ask her now. Like, what happened here? Can you remember? Because I can't remember all the details, and you'll know because you recorded a really in-depth episode about it. So yeah, it was amazing to actually have a dream come true and have the person I can ask and say, what happened there again? What happened? What was that? So yeah, it was great.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you
Amazing.
for joining
You
us.
guys are great.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. It is a long episode, so I hope you have a big long drive to do so that we can keep you company along the way.
Something to clean around the house.
Yes.
But if you have any things you want to add, any things you want to discuss, please get in touch with us. Maybe at Twitter, we're kind of there, but not. Blue Sky, we're there too. Email, we're there. Join us on Patreon. Like we said at the start, we're powered by Patreon. So if you want to help us keep going, because it literally does help us keep going, and you want to get on our Discord for Patreons, because it's awesome to be on the Discord for Patreons, where we add extra things and extra stuff. And Beth literally just jumped on the other day and was like, hey, does anyone want to hang out with me? And so there was just like a hangout.
Yeah. I need to talk to people. Bad things are happening.
Exactly. So it's cool.
Yes.
So
so
join us.
Yeah.
Join us. That sounds threatening, doesn't it? Join us over here. But yeah, and if not, just keep listening to the show because we love it. But we will see you next time for the next chapter. Whole new chapter. Winter is coming.
So obviously we're looking forward to it.
I can't wait when we get into the 59th year of after Aegon's conquest. Thank you for listening to us and joining us. Get in contact with all your questions. And tune into the next episode. We can't wait to chat with you again.
We can't wait.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.